This is Kate Baconsale. You're listening to Baconsale.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble. Fillet of a finny snake in the cauldron, boil and baconsale.
Oh, that was really creepy.
Little
Actually,
twist there at the end, and also Jacob, good timing on that. That one right about the intro time. So,
what region was that accent from, though?
That's the southwestern Missouri witch.
Oh,
Yeah.
For some reason, I believe there are witches out in Missouri.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
I don't know why.
They live in the Ozark Mountains.
Oh, now I believe it. Yeah, for sure.
They have caves that they dwell
The story's
in.
going too far, Jake.
They make fires.
We'll get into it.
And they cut ribbons. I'll tell Joel about that later.
Please do. Anyway, welcome to Baconsale. I'm Joel.
I'm Kent.
And Jacob.
Guys, I'd like to take a minute just before we begin the show. I'd like to make an announcement. And first, I'd like to start off with an apology. So there was a Radio Ronin event we had this past weekend. I was late, and it was thought best that I not actually go in. So for those of you who were there, I'm sorry I wasn't there to be with you. Please reach out. I'd be very, very happy to make it up to you. Now, most people probably do know that I'm no longer involved with Ronin. And to the loyal listeners who have listened for the past nearly 6 years, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share my life with you and for sharing your stories and your time with me. And I hope now that we are at this point, you can still continue to support me. And all I ask is that you continue to listen to me and these two gentlemen here on Baconsale. So thank you.
Thanks for including us in the listening thing.
Yeah. And speaking of Baconsale.
Speaking of Baconsale, we'd like to thank you for listening to our Soundtrack and Fears episode that we did last week. We asked you, the listener, what you thought about those soundtrack shows. And we were overwhelmed with the response that we got. A. Gray, Disney, otherwise known as Adrian Gray, the former listener emeritus.
Yes.
She said, so you were wondering if the listeners are interested in, she said, listeners, wow, are interested in your soundtrack and scores episode. I have to say that on Monday morning when I saw the title for this week's show, I literally and audibly cheered. These are some of my favorite episodes of Baconsale and love adding your suggestions to my current playlists.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks for getting me into the holiday spirit. Keep them coming, listener emeritus. That's awesome.
Are we sure that we didn't, make anyone's house possessed or bring
With the Ave Sami.
Exactly. I'm a little bit
Let us
worried.
know if that happened.
Yeah.
But no,
If you can speak and are not possessed.
I was going to say thank you to everyone who reached out and let us know that you enjoyed the episode. We love hearing your feedback, and we hope to continue to hear your feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
But that's not what we're talking about today. What are we talking about today, Jacob?
Witches. Nothing but witches.
Woman. Yes, 'cause
You're going to ruin the end
witch-
song, Joel.
No, which witch
you doing that
is
one?
worst?
Maybe.
I thought you were doing Season of the Witch.
Oh, yeah, probably Season of the
Witch. There's so many good witch songs out there.
Are there?
No.
Two?
So
Kiss?
back in 2015, we did an episode about zombies. Back in 2017, we did an episode about werewolves.
Why did we skip a year? I love these episodes.
I don't know why. We're still getting a rhythm in season 2, maybe.
I feel like season 2 we did pretty well. We just kind of bypassed it.
I think we just had other priorities.
Mistakes were made.
And then last year we did vampires. So this year we are doing witches.
Perfect.
So we have kind of the format's basically we talk about witches in history and folklore and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about Baconsale-approved witch movies.
Yeah.
So get ready. It's going to be a weird ride.
So it's kind of like almost two different shows put together.
Really is. This is a lot of content.
Yeah, so get ready, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, the most interesting thing about witches, I'm just going to dive right into this, Kent, because the most interesting thing is you think about zombies. Zombies are monsters.
Yes.
Werewolves, monsters.
Half man, half monster.
All cop. Vampires, monsters.
Sexy monsters.
Witches, can we call them monsters?
The internet would tell you no.
No, the internet, it's weird to see the tonal shift in how it used to be witchcraft and witches used to be kind of a scary, terrifying thing. And now it's like a movement?
Well, it's interesting because you look at the history of why people were afraid of witchcraft. Because before we get into persecutions of innocent people, like why are people afraid of witchcraft? Because it was all about Satan.
Satan.
And people were afraid.
Why'd you say it like that?
It makes it less scary. You can't invoke a Western Satan. And so people were very afraid of anything that had to do with demonology and Satanism.
Unlike today.
No, unlike today.
Satan.
Like,
Satan.
there's pagan rituals and demonic churches that are just like, hey, we're just like you guys.
And it's meant to be accepted.
Yeah.
And so any sort of appearance of that or any sort of unexplained thing was attributed to this, and witchcraft was assumed to be the cause. And so people feared and created these monsters. And here's the thing. We're going to talk about the truth behind a lot of this, but we're also going to talk about the folklore behind witches as well, because there are terrifying stories out there. There is sadness and persecution in the world's history.
But I just get worried on a number of levels, because I'm worried that if we talk about witches in a negative light, we're going to get cursed or cursed at.
Cursed at, most likely.
Yeah, because people, honestly, I mean, shows like Charmed, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Harry Potter, their depictions of witchcraft is kind of this empowering kind of witchcraft. Yes. And that's become kind of the norm now, to the point where it's weird to say anything negative about witches, because then it's like, whoa, we can't talk about witches. And I'm like, okay, first of all, witches are fictional. There's no magical spells going. I'm sorry, spoiler alert for my opinions.
Oh, hold on. As are zombies, and vampires,
but you can
werewolves.
You can bash on them all you want. Say that's ridiculous. This is terrible. And then this one, it's like,
you guys still believe in witches? You guys are no. Look, we're talking about.
Wait, witches are real?
We're talking about Halloween here.
I think there's a lot of people that would self-identify as witches.
No, people
do, because there's a religion out there, the Wiccan religion,
indeed,
and they follow certain beliefs that are pagan in nature, but not evil.
Yeah,
and so like I read on Wikipedia, the Wiccan beliefs are currently often found to be compatible with liberal ideals such as the Green Movement and feminism. Like that's kind of what the Wiccan belief is around.
Yeah.
And people have kind of merged witches and Wiccans together to the point where it's hard to talk about witches without seeming like you're bashing on Wiccans.
It's so true. Like when I was Googling like types of witches, and I wanted to be like, the one with green skin and the crooked nose.
Green screen. I love the green screen witch.
Because you can create any witch. But green skin and a crooked nose, like what we picture a witch on a witch's broom or a witch's brew or whatnot. We pictured this. I had to go to like the 49th page of Google to find any type of witch, because the first page of Google was like, you mean the nature witch? Or the garden witch? And it was really all about,
like healing and essential oils, and
which is great, but honestly,
this is a really broad definition that we're
ruining Halloween
venturing into.
Okay,
let witches be scary. I actually said this on the vampire show. I said, let vampires be scary. Stop humanizing them. Yeah. Let us have scary witches.
This is kind of the same general trend, though, right? Is we take things that are scary. We take, Maleficent.
Do you want to know what I think it is, though, Jacob?
Huh?
I think the witches cast a spell to make us see them in a favorable light. I think we're all under a
Illuminati
spell.
confirmed.
Break it for the next conspiracy theory show.
I think Scott Sprague would probably agree with you on that.
Probably so. We've all been had the fog over our eyes that we like witches now. Although we don't like witches, we just have accepted witchcraft as kind of, and people say they're witches and they'll boil things, and there is like
we've all been there, right?
Honestly, voodoo stuff and stuff like that. People really do believe voodoo is a religion, and it's people believe a lot of the things that happen.
Well, and everyone that goes to these essential oil conventions, they could probably be hanged for witchcraft.
Oh, now like back then,
yeah.
Honestly, if you showed up and you're like, "Hey, I have this oil
that'll be great out of context,
anything." You would. There's so many ways you could be like seen as a witch. We'll get into that later on.
Yes.
I do want to get into the etymology of the word witch, which is weird.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Etymology is just the breakdown of how a word came to be.
It's like peas, but they're a little bit more tough.
That's edamame.
Oh, okay.
And those are delicious.
Yeah. And you can't eat the outside.
You can't.
It's so tasty.
I always try anyway.
Yeah, I love garlic edamame. But the word witch actually derives from the Old English nouns Wicca, which is a male witch or a warlock, and Wiki, which is Wicce.
The source of all knowledge and truth?
No. Well, it should be. Wait, Wikipedia?
They
Wikipedia?
everything.
The witches are controlling the information.
Witchipedia.
Wikipedia.
I'm looking that up right now.
This show's off the rails already.
I'm going to buy that domain. One second.
But now, the problem is that's one take. There are so many different takes in there where the word witch came from.
Yes.
So many sources, because it is literally worldwide.
Right.
One other thing I wanted to mention is that the term witch, commonly associated with those who use metaphysical, the way we're using it, I should say, is associated with those who use metaphysical means to cause harm to the innocent.
Joel, I just looked it up. Wikipedia.com is real. They have 1,222 pages of magical and occult wisdom in our database. And they're adding more every day.
Every day?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Although the term witch nowadays is much more benign, positive, or even neutral about paganism or divination. We are referring to the metaphysical, harming the innocent witches when we talk about witches.
So there are. I want to cover 3 varieties of witches.
Please
so
do.
The first one is and there are 2 names for it. It's the neighborhood witch or the social witch. And this is a witch who curses a neighbor following a conflict.
The neighborhood witch.
Yeah. So it's like you.
I think every
ask
neighborhood has
someone-
one of those.
You definitely do. And then the second one is the magical or sorcerer witch. And so this one is the professional healer, sorcerer, seer, or midwife, or person who has increased their fortune through the perceived detriment of a neighboring household. So it's usually like there's a hex and they gain that energy through them. And so the third one is the supernatural or night witch. And this is portrayed in narratives as a demon appearing in visions and dreams. And we've read a lot of stories of this. There's some in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes, there's the one about the guy who drives a nail into a witch's outline on a tree and it hurts his neighbor.
Exactly. And also, I do want to go into the origin of witches, or the first ever mention, as we know of witches. And it's actually in the Bible. Bringing the Bible onto Baconsale.
Well, that's one of them. Because I was going to say, don't forget, there's also a Mesopotamian reference as well.
Oh, go ahead.
In the section of a code from the Hammurabi, Code of Hammurabi, which is Mesopotamians around 2000 BC, it talks about how if a man has put a spell on another man and is not justified, so it's talking about spells and casting spells and things like that, they would actually go throw them into the holy river or into a rapid river, and then they throw someone who's accused of witchcraft into a river, and if they're able, like a fast-moving river, and if they can get out, they're innocent. If they don't, it means that they weren't supposed to get out.
That's how we did it when I grew up.
Over in the Missouri witches?
Yeah.
Which is interesting
The
because
southwestern Missouri witches that live in caves.
I'm going to talk about some witch tests which kind of contradict
And
that.
we'll get into that,
Which
too.
contradict themselves. So
But yes, the
biblical one is from
references.
1 Samuel, and this is written between 931 BC and 721 BC, so quite a length of time. And so it tells the story of when King Saul sought the Witch of Endor, Star Wars, timeline
No, the
confirmed.
Ewoks were on the moon of Endor. They were not
So the Witch of
actually on
Endor,
Yeah.
it's from the battle for Endor, to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Philistine army. So Saul is seeking Samuel's spirit to defeat the army. The witch roused Samuel, who then prophesied the death of Saul and his sons. The next day, according to the Bible, Saul's sons died in battle, and Saul committed suicide. And so basically, it was talking about how evil a witch is and how she would never seek the help of someone that can curse another.
Well, even jumping back to biblical references, because it's just that's old text we're talking about. In Exodus, which is the second book in the Bible, it actually says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live."
Yeah.
It's Exodus 22:18.
Which was taken,
Again, this is always the rule in my house.
which was taken and ran with, which we'll get to.
You talked about types of witches. I want to talk about a couple more, because the word hag nowadays just means kind of old woman,
Right.
Old ragged
Crone
woman,
or whatnot, yeah.
But the used to be hag was a nightmare spirit in England, and she would sit on a sleeper's chest and sent nightmares to him or her.
I hate that.
And when they woke up, they would be unable to breathe or even move for a short period of time, otherwise known as sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
They would blame sleep paralysis on an old hag. Also, there was...
But I'm kind of convinced there are things that do kind of hold you down and give you sleep paralysis.
Witches?
Witches are shadow people.
Wait, what if shadow people are witches?
What?
Bum, bum, bum. Also, parents... Look, I'm not saying that I've never lied to my children. But
Oh, man, that's going to be used against you.
but what I'm saying is that sometimes parents will tell their children things to protect them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so apparently
I'm wondering
there
where
was
this is going, though.
The Northern English peg powler. Northern English peg powler was a river hag who lived in the river trees and had skin the color of greened pond scum. Parents who wanted to keep their children away from the river would tell them that the peg prowler would be in the river, and if they got too close to the water, she would pull them in with her big long arms, drown them, and sometimes eat them.
Wow.
So
Sometimes eat them.
this is what they would do. They would scare kids into getting away with the river by saying there's a witch in there.
Wait,
Which makes sense.
Have you talked about this? I mean, is this something you've brought up with your
Every
kids?
day. I'm like, don't get near daddy's candy or the peg prowler will grab you.
Did I ever tell you guys I used this tactic one time?
You used a witch tactic on your child?
It wasn't a witch, and it was
Your daughter is like under 2.
it was nephews. Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't have to worry about all the nightmares that ensued. But we were visiting my grandmother, their great grandmother's house, an old place built early 1900s. They had a gigantic well in the backyard.
A well is never good.
I mean, this thing is there was 2 different layers. You could fall 20 feet the first one and like 40 feet the second one.
What? Good
And there was almost nothing to protect children from just wandering into it, right? And so my sister kept being worried about it. And so I said, you know what we could do? I could make up a really creepy story about something in the well.
That's
And she was like, oh my gosh, should we do that? Is that okay? I don't know. And anyway, so I came up with a story of Jimmy who fell in the well and has never left.
Ooh.
And I'm like, if you walk outside, sometimes you can see Jimmy's footprints, and he's always standing back in the shadows, and he's dripping.
Oh man!
And so
your poor nephews.
They apparently drew pictures of him, and they were like, "Look, is this what Jimmy looks like?"
But the problem is then
They start to see him.
They never
What if they start
went
to see
near
him?
that well.
But the problem is they're going to get
Anytime.
curious. They're going to get curious and be like, let's see if we can see him.
No, they were
Shove each other
legit
down there.
afraid of
I'm
the well.
afraid of Jimmy in the well.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So beware of Jimmy. He stands outside the window. Sometimes you can see him looking at
Don't say that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to bring up Baba Yaga.
Yeah. So
Not John Wick.
Yeah,
Baba
right.
Yaga. Baba Yaga is from Slavic folklore, and
it like
she's
a
a
warlock?
hag who it's a woman. Actually, Baba is kind of a
I thought it was
feminine.
Boogeyman.
Yeah, but it's like a feminine mother, like a grandmother. Baba has that from.
Yeah.
It's a hag that lived in the woods in a house on chicken legs. Mm-hmm. The house was on chicken legs.
Sorry, what? The house itself.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and then she would
Giant
ride
chicken legs.
She would ride through the forest on a giant mortar or bowl,
And she was
sweep away her tracks with a broom.
She was known as Satan's grandmother
Satan.
and a punisher of souls that needed to learn a lesson.
Yeah. So once again, it's like kind of a morality tale, kind of a parental guide. These witches
Yeah.
were kind of keep people in check. But there may have been some repercussions later on because of that, which
Yeah.
we'll get into. Okay, you want to talk about type of spells?
So there are three general
basic.
categories of spells in folklore. So the first one is exactly what the category is. It's spell casting. And this is essentially what witches do. It's a set of words. It's a verse they may have.
Alohomora.
Exactly. It's
Accio sippy cup.
Wingardium Leviosa.
It's not Wingardium Leviosa. It's Wingardium Leviosa.
There we go. I was hoping you'd correct me. It's such an elitist. But yeah, or it's ritual. So this is just a general spell cast that people would watch out for if there was a witch around. The second one,
Obviously.
necromancy. And I don't mean Necco wafers. I mean necromancy. And those are worse than witchcraft.
Necromancy is the conjuring of the spirits of the dead for divination or prophecy.
Yes. So creepy.
And it could
right?
be animating.
Listen, sometimes it's just
Purposes
got to
as well.
happen, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But never do necromancy. But necromancy, maybe a little bit better.
Oh my gosh.
And the last one?
Necromancer mean the conjuring of that horrible candy.
Yeah,
Necco
because they
wafers.
don't sell them anymore. And the third one is demonology. So this is another thing that people would watch out for. And this is essentially the study of demons and how to summon and control them. So not just bringing back the dead or using the dead for their spirits and powers.
But demons, that never works out for anybody.
But yeah, you got
They have their own agendas.
They use, I was going to say, some witches use inscriptions on runes or sigils to give it magical power. Some people use wax or clay image, a poppet, otherwise known as a poppet, to kind of affect someone magically.
That's how I control both of you guys.
Some use herbs or potions. Some gaze at mirrors or swords for purposes of divination. So if you ever see someone staring
with
at a
my
sword,
lightsaber,
probably a witch. You're probably a witch.
and I'm
Kent's a
gazing at my
witch.
lightsaber.
Yes. If you gaze into your lightsaber, you are a witch.
Let the record show Kent is a witch.
So if you guys want protection from me,
Because they're everywhere,
because apparently I'm a witch,
Hex bag.
Here's what you need to do.
I've seen Supernatural.
All right, I've got
Yeah.
some too. So let's see how you protect. How do you protect yourself from a witch? Well, let's go back and forth here.
I would start with brass.
Brass is a good one.
So brass was used to repel witches. Like, for example, brass bells back in the olden days. And even now, I want to get myself a little brass charm because they'd hang this on the neck of livestock to prevent them from falling to the evil eye. And the evil eye is apparently Sauron or witches
One or the
Could be
other.
either.
or Satan.
I always protect myself from witches by approaching anyone that looks like they could be a witch and telling them that I love witches.
Wait, so you see an older person that looks a little creepy. And you
I
say,
love witches.
I love witches.
Yeah, I
I
usually
have friends that are witches.
I mean, sandwiches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they don't have to be old. I mean, sometimes they look. Sometimes they're young. You know, and I just tell them right away, first thing.
Okay.
And I've never had any problems, so it must work.
The logic here. It's astounding.
I was going to use glass balls
Okay, sure.
because apparently these glass balls, they're hollow balls called witch. They actually call them witch balls, but they were originally used as fishing buoys, and they float on the water. So apparently they call them that because they float on water like witches,
Like
float in
witches?
the water. Yeah.
That's true.
But they hung like big
They always
bags
float.
of these glass balls from homes to keep evil witches away in the 17th and 18th centuries.
So basically, what David Bowie had in Labyrinth that you would spin in
a
his
little
hand.
crystal thing like that.
Okay.
Apparently that
I respect
keeps them
that.
away.
Man, people
I
are
don't know
crazy.
Why.
You know-
Why would a glass ball keep a witch away?
No joke.
It's like, I'm going to go in that house. Oh, they have some decorating ideas. No.
And most of these are decorations.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I'm not going to be able to find those, but I can find a candle. And so there is a book, and we're going to describe this a little bit later, but it tells you to use holy candles to preserve yourself from the injury of witches. So just carry a holy candle,
Holy as in blessed,
as in
or holy
blessed,
as
or
in
from a
like,
church or whatnot.
Okay.
or you
Not
can
a
just use
Swiss
my
cheese.
approach. I mean, I'm
What
just
is your
saying.
approach? I like witches.
Yeah, you just tell them.
Look, I know
You get
we're-
ahead of the curve.
Hey, Team Witch, Team Witch.
Yeah, exactly.
Teen witch.
Oh, we'll get there.
I want to bring this up even though it's in Halloween, but I just think that Christmas is a very safe time away from witches because apparently mistletoe was a way to keep witches away. People used to hang that in their homes and barns, mistletoe, to keep witches away.
It never works for me. I always end up kissing
Witches-
witches. Right?
Witches hate kisses. Did you know that?
Not in my experience.
So when you say, I like witches, right under a mistletoe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
get a
I
kiss.
I see how it's
sometimes
going.
sometimes
you
these
just said,
encounters
doesn't matter
are
if they're
related.
old or young.
You have to protect yourself, man.
I'm getting a lot of insight to
This
Jacob
grip
here.
is serious.
That's a good strategy. I
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Jacob
So-
loves the witches, literally.
The next one I'm going to use is a rooster. So let me describe why a rooster would protect you
Oh yeah,
against a
I've heard
witch.
about this one actually.
Okay.
So in the 4th century Christian Latin poet, his name is Prudentius, he sang, and do you guys want me to sing this to you?
Yes,
Of course.
undoubtedly.
They say that the night-wandering demons who rejoice in the dunnest shades.
Dunnest?
Dunnest.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
That's your last name,
At
man.
the crowing of the croc, tremble and scatter in sore affright. That's the end of the song. There wasn't much rhythm or rhyme.
Was it in English?
He was a Latin poet.
Okay, good, because that didn't rhyme.
I can make it rhyme. I'll remix it. And so they're saying when the rooster crows, any witch or demon will just scramble at that point. And so this was later used like in the
cool.
time of like St. Benedict. They used roosters and they would recite
Kind of seems like a cop-out.
a cop-out.
It seems like, I mean, everyone was a farmer back in the day.
Right.
Everyone had roosters. It's like, oh, if you have a rooster, you're protected. Everyone's like, we're good.
Well, that's basically it. Like roosters will always crow in the morning, right? And so
Right.
they're saying morning will signify the end of night or darkness.
Right.
And so they would always recite the Bible verses or poetry right at morning when the rooster would crow. And they're saying witches are gone. We're safe. Kind of like everything's scary at night, but
It's
never
like-
scary during the day.
But what I mean is, like, it's like saying, okay, nowadays, it's like, okay, ketchup repels witches. And everyone has ketchup in their house. So everyone's like, we're good.
Yeah.
Just
Maybe
seem
it
like-
does. Is that what you're going to use?
I haven't had any witches in my house.
Works.
Ketchup works.
All right. What else you got, Joel?
I'm going to grab some cat's eye, saronyx, or ruby because those were worn as amulets or rings and thought to keep witches at bay.
Okay.
So apparently fancy jewelry will keep a witch away.
I'm going to go with something a little bit stranger. It's called a hagstone.
Ah, I saw a picture of that.
So the hagstone is basically a stone with a hole in it. Could be like a donut-shaped stone or whatnot, but it has a hole.
No, I've seen that in
it.
movies and stuff.
Yeah, so what they do,
hagstone?
Yeah.
what they do is they hang it from either like your bedpost, and that, like Joel talked about in England, they're worried about nightmares. They're worried about something watching them and hunting them while they sleep. So that would prevent nightmares.
Only
And
People are really smart, so they're like, you know what? A stone with a hole in it is going to protect us from this.
that's what they thought.
Makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Obviously.
And here's what I would use it for: is I would put it on my stable, because when you put a hagstone on your stable, it
stable?
it will prevent a witch from riding your horse.
Oh,
all night.
this is
to-
a horse stable.
Yeah,
Okay.
all night to exhaustion. Because if a
That
witch
reminds me of-
finds your horse, they'll ride it to exhaustion.
No, that reminds me of scary stories.
Those
telling.
darn
Yes, it
witches.
does.
Well, I'm going to scatter small stones and pebbles on my floor.
That's what the Blair Witch does. What do you mean? Why would you do that? What?
Apparently, that was also supposed to keep witches out of the home. Is if you have pebbles and small stones on your floor. To which I say that was another cop out of people just not wanting to sweep. It's like, why is this mess
no.
on
It's
our
for
floor?
the witches.
It's for the witches, honey.
Oh, yeah.
I can't
we'll be
clean it
safe
up.
now. Yeah.
I can't clean it up because witches will get in our house.
I like how we're proving everything wrong.
We're out of ketchup, and
People were lazy
ketchup
and like
to protect
modern
us.
conveniences and basically said, we're good.
yeah.
So, and here's one that I really like the origin of, and I wonder if it comes from this. So
To protect from
horseshoes.
witches.
To protect from witches. Horseshoes. So they're always seen as good luck charms, as we well know.
Wait.
And I think this is where they started.
Didn't you say they just hung the hagstone up on their stable so they wouldn't ride the horses?
Well, yeah. But
so if the horses are
They
wearing
love
horseshoes,
horses.
what's the point?
Here's the point.
If they're wearing them, it's different.
So horseshoe is a good luck charm against the evil eye once again, and witches. What you do is you have to, not with a horse on it, nail it over your doorway of like your house, your stable.
Face up.
So if you nail it to the doorway with the horse on it, things won't work.
It will be bad.
Okay.
I've heard, by the way,
Good to clarify.
I heard, by the way, it has to be up in like a U shape so
Yes.
that the good luck can stay in there. Because if you turn it upside down, it will spill out or something like that.
Yeah,
I have heard
there's
that.
two different like significances, but you cannot remove it once it's in place, or you remove the good charm from it entirely.
People be crazy.
Yeah, so I wonder if that was it, because like you see, everyone's like, that's good luck. I wonder if it was to prevent evil.
Yeah. Jacob, this one's for you. Once again, little
I'm ready.
supernatural reference.
Okay.
Salt.
Salt.
Witches hate salt. That's why they hate ketchup. It's very salty.
Actually, they don't bring salt into it much with witches. It's all ghosts.
Hey, supernatural isn't real, Jacob.
Yes,
This
it is.
real. But no, actually, they used to, and this is horrible. I hate laughing about some of this because I'm not laughing at the horribleness of the torture. I'm laughing at how ridiculous it is. But they used to, one of the methods for kind of interrogating someone was to force feed them a bunch of salt and give them no water to get them to confess that they were a witch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that just seems like that would bother anybody, regardless of whether they were a witch or not.
Do you want to move right to that before we go on to the witches of the world?
A couple more ways I think we need to protect ourselves.
Okay, go on. I'm done.
Okay. A rowan tree, just so you know, it has red berries on it, and apparently the color red was thought to be the best repeller of evil. So
Okay.
they obviously
Yeah.
weren't part of the rivalry.
Right.
Also, iron. It was said that folklore says that no witch can pass over cold iron. So people would bury iron knives in the earth around their home or wear iron amulets.
Careful where you step.
And then finally,
No, that's supernatural reference, though.
witch bottles.
Explain that, please.
These are date all the way back to the 17th century. It's a little like clay bottle, and they are filled with the urine or nail clippings of the person thought to have a spell cast upon them and then buried on the property. That would help.
I would probably avoid that house as a witch.
You're like,
Yeah.
what is that
Like,
smell?
oh, gosh,
Gross.
that's not right.
They also sometimes fill the witches' bottles with rosemary and red wine because the needles would impale the witch's spirit and the wine would drown it. So there you go.
Logic.
Now you
Well,
have,
I mean, logic of the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
well, now you have lots of different ways that you can protect yourself from witches. So you're welcome.
Try all these
everyone's
out,
like,
listener,
I
and
was
then let us
taking
know
notes
how it
on that.
goes.
We're gonna be tiering these when we try them out this year.
Yeah,
and see
we're
which
gonna
one
tier
works
these
best.
for sure.
My money's on ketchup.
I want to make sure we know how to identify a witch. Or how does that really...
How do you protect yourself if you don't even know you have a witch nearby you?
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious, guys.
You
If
think
you're in
every
doubt-
old woman's a witch?
If you're in doubt, you just follow my plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the
Which, by
horseshoes.
the way, we should clarify.
By the way, if you walk up to Jake and he says, I like witches, maybe take a look in the mirror.
this is
Do
mostly
your hair. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was going to say this is mostly for Jacob out there, but just so you know, it's not just females that are witches. Like men can be witches as well. In fact, because actually there were a lot of men that were executed for witchcraft as well, even during the Salem witch trials. But then in Iceland, Finland, Estonia, Russian, the majority of people that were accused during witch hunts were male. So
Wow.
it's like there can be male witches as well as female
Majority.
witches. So Jacob, you just got to start by asking every old person, not just the women.
So it's witchism.
And didn't the term warlock come from Scotland?
I think so.
Yeah. So they said witchcraft essentially, but they would in regions
how
they
do
call
you-
them warlocks.
But the
You just
question
really complicated
remains-
my life, though, Joel, because now I'm going to have to walk
I like
up to
witches
every
and
dude.
warlocks.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, I like warlocks. I love them. I love them.
Hey, and then mistletoe.
Team Warlock, huh? Mistletoe.
Yeah. But the thing
I have
is,
some with me.
but that's just it, is witch could refer to a male or a female. It's not
Yeah.
exclusively a female term. The warlock thing kind of came an identifier later on.
Yep.
But how do you identify a witch, Kent? What do you have? What are some tests that you could do to find out if
Joel?
someone is a witch?
Let's just close our eyes for a little bit.
Closing.
And let's pretend that we are paranoid
Your eyes are open.
pilgrims.
Now they're closed. Okay, we're paranoid pilgrims or Puritans.
We're
maybe.
Puritans. And we really want to make sure that someone is not a witch.
Can I open my eyes yet?
You can open your
'Cause I
eyes.
have notes
Okay.
here.
So the first test I want to talk about, you have someone that is accused of witchcraft and you say, I'm going to make sure, and this is basically a court of law. We're going to make sure they are a witch or we're going to find out if they're not. And we'll hang them if they are. So the first one is a swimming test. Now the reason,
infamous swimming
Can you
test.
swim?
this is one you'll see in movies first.
Because it's really ridiculous.
No,
It's really hard to swim.
Guys, it makes so much sense. So, so witches they're bound and they're tossed in the water to see if they sink or float. And I always kind of wondered, like, why would they do that? Because if they're innocent, they will sink like a stone
Right.
and drown. If they are actually a witch, because they have spurned the sacrament of baptism, It was thought that the water would reject the body and make it float to the top. So if they survive drowning, you're a witch.
Which the human body, by nature, will float. Mm-hmm. Like that's
Hang 'em.
That's basically our bodies. The human body will float in
Hang 'em.
water. Like you hold your breath, you're a buoyant.
But
float.
many people died by sinking because their hands were tied.
Yeah, they were. Although I will clarify, because I learned this actually during the research, Kent. They usually would tie a rope to them, and the point was if they
could
started
pull
to
them
sink,
up.
they were supposed to pull them out. But it wasn't always successful.
Yes.
So, yeah. Not that I'm defending these people, but just...
This is us doing these tests, Joel. We are guilty of this.
It gets very Hollywoodized, and you get this kind of image of what went on, and it's like, but at the same time, it was such a random test.
These all are.
Speaking of random, here's
Proceed.
Jacob, let's say
I'm ready.
Let's say that you have someone that
I
you
do.
thought was under a spell, like your wife fell ill, and you're like,
Okay.
oh, obviously
she might be under a spell. The
this a
demon is
witch.
sitting on her chest at night,
Yeah.
and now she has sleep paralysis.
Take her urine.
No,
Too late.
I'm out.
mix it with rye meal, and then make a little patty, and then feed it to a dog.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I mean, actually, that's happened more times than you would think.
Well, because some of the powers are going to be in the urine, like it's like a urine sample. Like
powers.
If you had a spell cast on you, get a drug test, it'll show up.
Okay.
But when the dog eats the cake, it will hurt the witch, and she'll cry out in agony. So feed the dog the urine cake, and then listen for anyone yelping.
Is there another way?
There are actually. I would love to share one. This one is
Okay.
This one's really simple. So
Okay.
this one is called the prayer test, right, Jake? If
Okay.
let's say I'm accusing you of being a witch, and I say, "Can you quote scripture to me?" What
And
would
I'll
you
be
do?
like, "You bet your mom I can."
And then,
I'll be like, "Jesus wept."
and I would say, "That's a devil's trick. You're a witch."
Yep.
Because
crap.
if you couldn't quote scripture, you're a witch. But if you could, it's a devil's trick.
Not only that, they would
Literally.
make them recite the Lord's Prayer.
Yes.
And if they messed up one word, they'd say, "Oh, that's obvious. You stuttered over that word. You flipped these words. Obviously, you're a witch."
Are you sure all these people didn't just want some excuses to
A lot of
do weird crap
excuses.
to others?
And we'll get to this.
Oh, okay.
What? This one actually hits kind of close to home for me.
What? Where are you going with this?
You look for moles, birthmarks, scars,
Oh,
or extra
no.
nipples.
Is it the
Joel,
extra
is it
nipple
time
part?
to talk about the third nipple?
No, although Marky,
that where you always have your
Marky
shirt on?
Mark would be in trouble.
Yeah, he would.
Because he's got a third nipple. But people with moles and birthmarks, they considered them marks of the devil. Like so I went to the dermatologist
I've heard
a couple
of
years
those.
back just to get a checkup and everything.
And he said, "You have the mark of the devil."
Well, he did. No,
Oh,
he actually,
yeah.
actually, you want to know what he said, Jacob? It was almost more hurtful.
Okay.
He said, well, you have your fair share of moles, and then you have someone else's share.
Oh,
I was like, ouch.
jeez.
Thanks, Doc.
And you're like, "It's the devil's mark, okay? Don't be such a jerk."
They would examine bodies, and if they had moles, birthmarks, scars, or an extra nipple, anything weird, skin tags, they would consider it a mark of the devil. But then they would, that's not even the worst, like after the humiliating part.
Yeah.
But then they would actually stab the mole or birthmark or third nipple or anything like that. And if no blood came out, or if it didn't bleed when pricked, or if it didn't hurt, it was definitely the mark of a witch. Like they would put these,
if it didn't bleed.
if it didn't bleed or it didn't hurt, they would then say you're a witch. If you
Yes.
if your mole, like hairy mole, did not bleed.
Also, if you couldn't find anything that way, they'd have the witch accused, and they'd find the person that was possessed or hexed by the witch, and they'd say, "Okay, person who is possessed, go and scratch the witch who you think cursed you." And if that brought relief to the person that was possessed by scratching the witch until they bled, that person was a witch.
Oh my gosh, it's so weird.
So weird.
By the way, with the poking of the moles and scars and all that, there were actually some people who used retractable blades so that it would look like nothing happened, just so they could accuse them. Jerks.
Those jerks.
I know. Kent, what else you got?
Retractable blades.
Identify witches.
There are many things. Like you talked about the witch cakes, right? With
Yeah.
you feed it to the familiar.
Yep.
There's
The familiar meaning the familiar spirit.
familiar spirit, which is like an animal, a cat, or a
An
dog.
animal guide.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you communicate with Satan through.
Also, there's the touch test. Really simple. So witches were forced to touch their victims. So non-reactions from the victims, that signed innocence. But if the victim came out of their fit, so meaning they're like
shaking. They're like, oh, they're possessed. And the witch comes up and touches them.
the witch, that was not a witch. But if the person went, then the person was a witch, and that was proof.
If the person felt better, then
Yeah,
the person
immediately.
that touched them was a witch. Have you guys ever talked to yourselves?
Is there any way to prove someone's not a witch, actually? Because it
At
seems
this
like
point, we're
everything
not
is just
sure.
like, yeah.
Guilty until proven guilty.
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah.
Yes.
Have you guys ever talked to yourselves before?
A lot.
You're a witch.
What?
You're a witch.
Oh.
Sarah Good, who was actually, I can't remember if she was in the Salem witch trials over in England, but she was sometimes seen muttering to herself, and people are like, "Oh, she's casting a spell. She's a witch."
Just even talking to herself. What if she was singing a song or humming?
Witch.
You know, whistling.
Maybe she was prepping for a podcast.
Witch.
Whistling.
If you
should be
podcast, you're a
witchcraft.
witch.
And you got another one, Joel?
I do. Well, because, talking to yourselves is enough. If you've ever talked to a pet, you might be a witch.
No way. So
Because-
if I'm like, cruise, I cruise.
Consorting with a familiar.
Well, we already decided I'm a witch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Jake.
true.
But that's just it. People had pets.
We
and
already know.
If they talked to their pets, they
We know
would
what you
consider
are.
that they were a familiar, that's who they were communicating with the devil. If you talk to your pets,
That's everybody.
I
So
know.
everyone with a fur baby is a witch.
Yeah.
you said
Especially you.
it. You said it. People,
I brought some mistletoe, King.
I brought up the Salem witch trials. I brought up England.
Yeah.
But this is not something that is just people think of the Salem witch trials as like the big thing.
No.
It's not.
Yeah.
There's witchcraft all around the world and trials that happened all around the
And
world.
even today.
That is the part that blew my mind, Kent.
So I'm going to start with
What?
South Africa. This one is a very famous term for a witch, and it's witch doctor. So witch doctors are
Exactly. Ting, tang, wada wada bing bang.
they're herbalists who can predict
Ooh,
the future, and they use psychic
Ting,
powers
tang, wada wada bing bang.
to protect against evil spirits. So they use trance and musical rituals to communicate with ancestors. So these witch doctors are still around today.
I've seen some of this weird crap on Netflix. I'm trying to think what it was. There were some weird religions religions of the world or something.
Yeah.
It was all focused on the witch doctors.
Oh, that's pretty
There
cool.
are, well, that's
And there was a lot of blood sacrifice and
Well, a
some
lot
weird
of
stuff
these-
going on with the witch doctors.
a lot of these witch doctors, they actually perform good services for people,
Right.
good spells. But then if stuff doesn't go the way the people want, then they'll turn against the witch doctor. So
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
why anyone decides to be a witch doctor, honestly.
Yeah, it seems a little dangerous.
So in places like I'm not even gonna say these right: Burkina Faso, Ghana, India, Kenya, Malawi, Nepal, and Tanzania, there are regular executions and convictions and executions
Even
of
now?
witches today.
What?
In Tanzania, about 500 older women are murdered each year because
Holy.
of accusations of witchcraft for being a witch. Tanzania.
I don't know where that is.
In fact, in 2008, the president publicly condemned witch doctors for killing albinos for their body parts. Because apparently that was a thing. Well, albinos' body parts give you, you can make an amulet out of
Yeah.
it that will bring you good luck.
I mean, that is a problem. So,
That is so dark and real.
It gets worse.
So-
in 2006,
Jeez.
between 25,000 and 50,000 children in the Democratic Republic of Congo have been accused of witchcraft and thrown out of their homes.
Kids?
In 1 year. Well, I guess not in 1 year. It was as of 2006.
Is
so
it
who
because
knows?
Congo was so terrible?
The movie?
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with that.
it could.
So in Chile, there is a witch. It's called a kalku, and this is an evil sorceress who exists in opposition to healers and spiritual leaders. So basically, it's just a thorn in their side. It's an antagonist. And so the kalku, they work with evil spirits to wreak havoc, and they use black magic, and they're believed to have evil sidekicks, such as, and they call them. Sorry, the names are going to get hard to pronounce. I should have Jake read them. Ankimeyan, and they are creatures that reanimate the corpses of deceased children.
Whoa.
And so they basically have a horde of deceased children following them around.
That's not creepy.
Creepy.
By the way, in Ghana, women are often accused of witchcraft and attacked by their neighbors, and so they created witch camps.
Quit making this real, Joel.
I know. There are 6 witch camps in the country where women can kind of flee there for safety. They have to create that in Ghana.
Jeez.
In
This is presently. You're still
This is
talking
presently.
about. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, there were people who were executed for witchcraft in 2011, 2012, 2014. This is all real weird stuff.
Back to sillier stuff.
Go silly. I'll stay silly for a bit.
In the Philippines, there is a witch called the, ready for this?
And that's what she's called?
Manga Kukulam. Yeah, I did pretty good. So these sorcerers are believed to perform
Did you just
black...
pat yourself on the back for
I
a pronunciation,
did.
even though you don't have any confirmation it was correct?
I'm confirming
You're
that.
like, that sounded great.
So they use black magic, like basically voodoo, and they cast incantations and bring harm to others. So these can be men or women, and they sell love potions and services to help patrons, not our patrons, but exact revenge on,
But they
those,
could.
on those who have who have wronged
Just
them.
make sure you get that tier, and
Yeah.
we can make sure that's a service.
So the purpose of the Manga Kukulam, there we go. They are
He
there.
literally patted himself on the back, listener.
They are there to basically be paid so they can cause harm to those who wish to have harm on.
By the way, in Japanese folklore, there are basically 2 types of witches. Are you ready for the 2 types of witches?
We're ready.
Those who employ snakes as their familiars and those who employ foxes.
Really?
Which then I have to ask you guys, are you more of a snake people or a fox people?
Fox for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Witches. You just didn't pass
Wait,
that
hold
test.
on. I feel like we had no choice there. So, I mean, like we could go on like West Indies. There's a type of witch called the Obeah. And once again, it's voodoo. It's all about sinister potential here and gaining knowledge and predicting the future.
I was going to say there's also Navajo witches as well who use corpse powder, powder from corpses, to curse their victims.
It's a great seasoning on scrambled eggs.
Oh, God.
I like witches.
That was gross.
So speaking of the Western U.S., skinwalkers are
Yeah.
considered witches.
Which we talked about them
Those are
in
witches?
the werewolf show.
The werewolf show, and also we did a
I thought
few.
they
in
were their own like brand of thing.
They are, but there's like witchcraft. It's all about kind of selling your soul to
there's
Satan.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is there's a strong tie.
Satan.
There's a strong tie between witchcraft and vampirism and witchcraft and werewolfism.
Okay.
It's all kind of tied together in the supernatural world. By the way, in Russia, they have a very deep superstition with a lot of witchcraft, but their witchcraft mostly consists of earth magic and herbology and things like that. So they talk about when the herbs that they picked can be the most powerful. You guys want to know when you get the best magical herbs?
I'd
Here's the
love to
recipe.
know.
What season?
The
Let me
recipe. Oh, wait till you hear this. Botanicals should be gathered. Are you taking notes? During the 17th minute of the 14th hour, so 2:17, under a dark moon in the 13th field, wearing a red dress, pick the 12th flower on the right.
Do you have a red dress?
I do.
Okay,
just
good.
for this occasion.
So if you're,
I'm a minute late.
my dress
Oh, these herbs are gonna suck.
my dress is magenta, not red. What am I doing?
So what does this do?
That gives you the most powerful herbs. That's the time
For
to pick
what?
it. For whatever spell you're doing.
Like KFC? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's a 7 herbs and spices. But also they
Chicken is gonna suck
now. We know the secret ingredient.
yeah, it's the 13th field, 12th flower on the right.
The Colonel is a witch.
Also, they have a number of marriage traditions to keep the bride and groom faithful, including
Yeah.
this one where before the wedding, to keep the groom faithful, the bride would take a ritual bath at a bathhouse before the ceremony. Her sweat would then be wiped from her body using raw fish. The fish would then be cooked and fed to the groom. That
I feel
helps
like
keep
it would
husband
put
and wife
more
together.
on the body than take away with the
I thought the same thing too.
Yeah.
I'm like, rubbing a raw fish on me does not seem like it would help me.
It's like get really sweaty,
clean up.
then get rubbed with the raw. Oh my gosh, that's
It's
disgusting.
actually the
It smells
original
like
Axe
sushi.
body spray. That's where the smell comes
I mean,
from.
it's like an oil that they cook it in like that. Is that the idea? It's just like
don't
putting some olive oil on
It's
there,
a
but it's
bad
body sweat.
idea.
you.
You never know till you try it.
I think I know.
Not gonna try it.
Not gonna try.
I think
it.
we might know actually. Yeah.
Says the guy who sprinkles people on his eggs.
So can we get into the history a little bit?
Please do.
Okay, so there are a few stories I want to cover. First, maybe about like the first time they were mentioned in culture is like beyond the Bible, beyond Mesopotamia.
Well, you just brought that up. I just want to bring this
Yes.
up real quick too. That it's not exclusively to Christian
it
Christian
is
religions
not.
as well. In fact, Jewish law views the practice of witchcraft as very offensive, and they actually give an example of good magic versus bad magic using cucumbers. So it says the one who creates the illusion of picking cucumbers should not be condemned. Only the one who actually picks the cucumbers through magic. So there you go.
So if
You're
wave
mad,
your hands,
Harry Potter, no good because they're doing the
well, they're obviously witches.
Accio cucumber. Muslims as well also forbid magic and witchcraft in their practices as well. The Quran, it talks explicitly against doing that. So
Wow.
yeah. Did you mention the Bible? I want to bring that up. That it's
Yeah.
not just Christianity; it's like a worldwide thing.
So let's talk about the Dark Ages real quick. So this is 1486, and a book is released, and it is a bestseller. In fact, it is the second biggest bestseller in Europe.
They printed 20 editions initially, and then another 16 some years down the road.
So the first selling
New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, New York Times or London, England bestseller.
Yeah.
Or so the first biggest selling book was the Bible. The second was called the
Malleus
Maleficarum,
Maleficarum.
and it is known as the Hammer of Witches.
Which was my band's name in college.
That is
Hammer?
awesome.
No,
band
I
name.
bet you money there's a real band out there called Hammer of the Witches.
So this was a guide on how to identify, hunt, and interrogate witches. A lot of this stuff wasn't really known, and so basically, it was German Dominicans compiled all this information.
They're like, let's make up some stuff and put it in a book.
They made up stuff.
Yeah.
And they said, let's accuse everyone and kill everyone. And so within a century, witch hunts were the most common, and most of the accused were executed by burning at the stake or hanging. And it says single women, widows, and other women on the margins of society were especially targeted. So they were trying to cleanse the population
crazy.
of what they felt was unwanted.
So a lot of people blame this book for the fervor, the witch hunting.
You don't think it
fervor.
was?
No, I think it was, but at the same time, it was used in secular courts in the in Renaissance Europe,
Okay.
but it was not used by the Inquisition. They cautioned
you're
against
right.
relying on this book because they're like, this may not be scripture, and so maybe we shouldn't be using
But
it.
it's really popular.
But they're like witches. Everyone loves witches.
So this is crazy. Between 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death in Europe. Germany,
80,000 people.
yeah.
People
Well, back
talk
then, that's a huge number.
Plus, I'm
too.
saying is like people talk about the Salem witch trials as like the big thing.
Yeah.
19 people. That all were executed in the Salem witch trials. 20 technically, but
In between, so 160 years, 80,000 people were killed. Men and women were killed. And Germany had the highest execution rate, and Ireland had the lowest.
Yeah.
But still 80,000.
well, and,
Wait, what
okay,
was the highest?
Germany.
Germany, man.
But they had, so like people talk about the Salem witch trials, but there were also the Trier witch trials, the Fulda witch trials, the Basque witch trials, the Würzburg witch trial, the Bamberg witch trial. Like there's all these other trials that happened out there, and a lot of them had the same kind of horrific testing and confessions and executions and things like that. And so I was actually fascinated by reading up on all these other witch trials because my life most of the time has been basically England and America. So
Yeah.
I've opened my worldview now.
But we do need to address the Salem witch trials.
We really should, because it is like it's part of American history.
Yes.
But it wasn't the first
No, it was
witch
not.
accusation. In fact, 1645, Springfield, Massachusetts, was America's first accusations of witchcraft when husband and wife.
Well, this isn't far from Salem, right?
No, not very far at all. And just before it, too. Like, well,
About
50
50
years before.
Yeah.
Husband and wife, Hugh and Mary Parsons, accused each other of witchcraft.
So they got in a domestic
They got in a
argument.
domestic dispute.
Yeah.
That's going to mess up the marriage a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
He's a
And-
witch. She's a witch.
And that's the thing. It's like, in the end,
And then, like, civil courts get involved.
yeah, they actually accused each other of
Hang 'em
witchcraft.
both.
And he was actually he was found innocent. She was acquitted of witchcraft, but actually was sentenced for murder because there was a whole other thing there. And
That's a lot of stuff.
yeah, I don't want to get too dark here, but it's an interesting story.
I'm really curious now.
But the weirdest part is there was
Can we
actually
get a summary? Family-friendly summary?
no.
Go look it up.
Had to think
It's
about
just sad, is what it is. It's not inappropriate or anything like that. But the funny thing is, like, I think it was like a couple years later, there was another Mary Parsons who was accused of witchcraft. So when you look her up, make sure it's Hugh and Mary Parsons,
Okay.
like the husband and wife. From 1645 to 1663, about 80 people throughout Massachusetts Bay Colony were accused of practicing witchcraft, and
Yeah.
13 women and 2 men were executed. It was about It was in New England from 1645 to 1663. So once again, this is pre-Salem witch trials.
And remember, the reason we talk about America now is that no one was really accusing anyone of witchcraft. They already killed a lot of people. And so America, being a semi-new country, hey, we are afraid of everyone.
We're witch-free.
Everyone is a witch at this point. So 1692,
There are no witches in America.
except 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams began suffering from fits, body contortions, and uncontrollable screaming. And today, it's believed that they were poisoned by a fungus that caused spasms and delusions.
But they said it was because of demons.
Yes.
And they started accusing other people.
So mass hysteria ensued. 3 women were accused of witchcraft, and that is Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba. And she
Tituba was the servant
yeah, she was
from
the servant
Barbados.
for Paris's father. Yes.
Yeah.
And so Tituba confessed to being a witch and began accusing others of using black magic. And remember, when you confess, you're generally tortured.
Yeah.
Right? You finally just succumb to it, and you say something maybe to save yourself, maybe to get some leniency in your sentence, and you accuse others because others probably accused you first. Mm-hmm. And so on June 10th, Bridget Bishop became the first accused witch to be put to death during the Salem witch trials, and she was hanged in Salem. Ultimately, around 150 people were accused, and like we said, 18 people were put to death.
Well, and the numbers get kind of fudged because I've heard 18, 19, and 20.
Okay.
But it's about 14 women and about 6 men were killed.
This is pretty small beans compared to 80,000 folks.
But it's a
and
focal point because
ongoing.
it's part of our history here in America.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting, too, that a lot of people say it was primarily women that were getting accused, but it was also primarily women accusing other women.
Yeah.
Like they were
Well, just jealous or something?
Yeah, it's like she
Depends.
talked to my husband, for
Yeah,
example.
Yeah, or I want his land.
Yes.
And so it was like, I'll accuse that guy. I remember reading The Crucible as a kid and thinking Giles Corey was the coolest because of his line where like he was one of the men who was killed, and they did it by putting stones on his chest and then building it up until they crushed him.
Now, a lot of the Crucible used a bunch of the real people's names you were just saying,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. These are real names we're talking about, and they used real names in The Crucible. They did alter some of the facts for the play and the movie, But Giles Corey, one of the things, I think it is historical actually, but it's in the play, so I'll say it. But like they say, they're confess. Do you have anything to say? And they're putting the stones on his chest, and then they say, do you have anything to say? And he goes, more weight.
So
They
good.
put the stone on him, and then he died. But one of the not a fun fact, but an interesting fact is not one single person was burned at the stake in the Salem witch trials.
Interesting.
They were all hanged or crushed by stones, or they died in prison. But no one was burned.
Did it say
at
a
the
reason
stake.
why? Was that just kind of out of fashion at that
Probably
point?
at that point they were like, we've done
Those
that.
Europeans are so backwards.
1720.
Hang them. And so I do want to jump back in time real quick. I'm going back 300 years. So this is in 1324. It's about a woman named Alice Kyteler. So she was a wealthy Irish moneylender whose husbands had the nasty habit of dying too soon and leaving all of their fortune to her. So her fourth husband came down with a strange sickness, and his children began to suspect something fishy with Alice. So she was accused of having all of her husbands poisoned and of having sacrificed animals to Satan. Her rituals were very curious, and so she used hair from the buttocks and clothes from... No, I'm serious. And clothes from...
Her own? Or what?
Anyone's.
Okay.
And clothes from unbaptized children. So people actually found like mysterious powders and written spells in her home.
Clothes from unbaptized children. Okay.
So she was...
That's
so
weird.
basically, she's a poisoner. Like, she's a murderer, and everyone said she's a witch because she has powders and she has these books. So she was tried for witchcraft, and she was the first witch ever to be accused in Ireland. She was sentenced to death, but she miraculously disappeared the night before the execution, never to be seen again. 1324.
Husband number 5.
I'm going to jump ahead back to
see
America.
her.
This is 1817.
Okay.
The Bell Witch. You guys may have heard about this somewhere in
I have
witch
heard
lore.
this
Like,
one,
it's actually
yeah.
kind of a weird story.
I have my mistletoe ready.
No, you won't. You won't want this.
Okay.
It's a longer story, but I'm going to cut it down. This is 1817. It's at John Bell's farm.
I love witches.
It's your farmer.
I'm scared.
You're John Bell. People started hearing things. Like, it was like pounding on doors, like slaps on walls, eerie chain rattling. And before too long, a animal showed up that no one could identify. It was described as a half dog and half rabbit.
They said like had red fur and
Yeah.
ears like a fox and...
Yeah, so everyone's like, what is that? Half dog, half rabbit. Soon, in the home, blankets were pulled from the kids' beds. Family members were scratched and kicked and had their hair pulled from their buttocks. No, not really.
family friendly.
John Bell's daughter, Elizabeth, she received the worst of the abuse and was slapped and pinched until her body was covered in bruises. And there was a spirit that spoke to people. So it was like a witch almost transferring her spirit. Identified herself as Kate Batts. And she was the neighbor of the Bells, who he had some business dealings with. And I feel like this is really familiar with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark story, actually. The 3 Bell sons, they fought under General Andrew Jackson. And they told him the story. Hey, we have a witch. Her spirit visits us and like
President Andrew
tortures my
Jackson.
sister. So President Andrew Jackson,
Was he president at the time?
he was just a general.
That's right.
And they served under him. So he was so intrigued with the story, he's like, I've got to go to this farm.
Yeah.
The witch taunted his men and held the carriage wheel still. They're like, let's get out of here. And she just kept calling them frauds and just horrible names. And they all just took off. Like they were like, I don't really want to see this anymore. We're like, we're going to get cursed. And so she continued to torment the family, said, I'm going to kill John Bell. And when he died in 1820, a vial of what was presumably poison was found. Also, John Bell Jr. gave some of this vial to the cat, died instantly, and then the spirit spoke up, exclaiming joyfully, I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, which fixed him. And so John Jr. threw the
Even holding that
vial
one back.
into the fireplace, burst into a bright bluish flame, and shot up the chimney. And she kind of quieted down after the death of John Bell, and she would kind of visit the family members here and there. And they say to this day, the area is a hotbed of activity, and people claim to hear sounds, see candlelights, see orbs, and ghostly apparitions. So it's just kind of like this family was just watched all the time by spirit and a woman next door.
Creepy.
That is creepy.
Okay, so you're going to love this.
Okay.
It's called the Witch of Yazoo.
I love it already.
So this is in the 1800s. So the Witch of Yazoo sounds a lot like the mythological sirens.
Sounds like a John Denver song.
It does. But it's like a siren
Witch
from
of
mythology.
Yazoo,
Keep going.
I love you.
No, don't love her. Because she's a siren. Like, she wants you to love her. So, according to legend, a witch lived along the Yazoo River, was caught torturing fishermen she lured off from the river. And so they found 2 butchered bodies hanging from the rafters in her home. Sorry, Joel.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so she fled. So
I was just about to sing I come from the water, but
no,
apparently I don't want to anymore.
you don't want to. So while running from authorities, she fell into quicksand. As she sank to her death, she proclaimed that she would see the city burn In 1904, her prophecy came true as the city of Yazoo was set ablaze. Ever since, the witch's grave has been surrounded in chains. Legend has it that if the chains are broken, the city will burn once again.
Dun, dun,
How much? What year was it she died?
That was it. This was in the 1800s. It doesn't give a specific year.
It was in 1402. One day this town will burn.
That's what I was wondering. That's exactly
500 years later. But the thing about it, Kent, as I want to talk about, is the reason that I think these witch stories are so prevalent now is partly because of the British Witchcraft Act of 1735.
Go on.
That is, and it was basically, I think it was because England felt a little guilty about the witch hunts they've been doing for the past 100 years, a couple hundred years. Mm-hmm. So they made it a crime for a person to claim that any human being had magical powers or was guilty of practicing witchcraft.
Oh, okay.
It became illegal in Great Britain to accuse someone of witchcraft after 1735.
So the witch was like, yes, we're winning.
They won. They did the spell to get Parliament to pass it.
Soon we'll change the internet.
In fact, the last person executed for witchcraft in Great Britain was Janet Horne in 1727.
Okay.
There were some other people who have been imprisoned for witchcraft, but that's, I don't know. It was kind of fuzzy because it's I thought it was illegal, but apparently it's more of a guideline than a rule. In 1944 was actually Helen Duncan was the last person in Great Britain to be imprisoned for fraudulently claiming to be a witch.
What year was this?
1944.
Okay. Wow.
So years later, apparently that she was the last person to be.
What do you mean she was a fraud? How do we know?
That's what I said. I'm like, oh, well, I guess she was a fraud.
They're probably like, make this float. I can't.
Yeah.
So
pull this cucumber with your magic powers.
I can't do it.
So there you go. There is our our extensive history of witches.
Yeah.
And we say extensive because there's no way we can cover everything out there.
There's so much folklore out there.
So much folklore out there. We wanted to give a broad overview, and we didn't have much time to do it.
Okay, so we've covered the folklore, how to spot a witch, how to protect yourself from a witch, but we also did this really dumb thing. And no, we didn't summon anything.
No.
We watched a lot of bad movies and some good, I think.
But we do this every year.
We do.
When we talk about vampires or werewolves or even zombies, where we're like, man, a lot of these movies are not good. But it seemed like the witch movies were especially not good.
We say that every year, by the way. We do.
Vampires, yeah.
And there were a lot that Joel and I hadn't seen, and so we, as we do, every time we have a homework assignment, we watch a good dozen movies.
Yep.
And so we watched every movie on this list, and we're going to tell you if it's personally Baconsale-approved or not.
Yes. And if Jacob, if you've seen it, you can vote as well. Otherwise, it might be a split vote.
I shall.
Yeah.
So I'll vote based off descriptions and the title.
We have a list of a lot of movies, so let's go through these.
I'm ready.
How many movies do we have? 26?
The first movie is Beautiful Creatures.
Synopsis. Ethan longs to escape his small southern town. He meets a mysterious new girl, Lena. Together, they uncover dark secrets about their respective families, their history, and their town.
I have seen this.
You have?
This was a young adult fiction movie that was meant to spawn a series and only lasted one movie. I'm not sure why.
Well, probably because its budget was $50 to $60 million, and its budget was about $60 million, and its box office was about $60 million.
Now, that's crazy that it was a flop because it had the kid who played Han Solo, which surely wasn't in a flop. Oh, wait.
Oh, sad.
Oh, my gosh. So, Alden Ehrenreich, I can never say his name right.
Good job, though.
He's
Pat
the main,
yourself on the back.
Thank you.
You did great.
He's the main guy on this one, and oh, my gosh, his accent drove me nuts.
Sure.
He is like...
He has charisma.
I don't know where he's from.
Yeah, there's charisma. I remember him having
but he's
charisma.
not from the South.
No,
because his Southern accent is like, oh, golly gee, I want to leave this small town. And I'm like, shut up.
I do kind of remember that.
This does have an impressive cast, though.
It does. It's got Jeremy Irons, Emma Thompson.
Emmy Rossum.
You like Emmy Rossum?
I do.
Yeah, they leaned into this, hoping it would be something.
Like, it was like stylish Louisiana witches.
Yeah.
And it didn't really... And it was like, make your choice. When you turn 16, you accept the blood moon.
Remember, it had some good elements, and then...
We're not witches,
and
we're
then
casters.
huge cliches that just landed dead.
And it was just trying to establish mythology for more movies.
Oh, it was every single character. I felt like I was missing something the whole time.
Right.
Even though every single character was cramming as much exposition into their dialogue as they could.
Yeah.
Apparently, when you turn 16 or 18, one of the two.
It's 16, yeah.
16, that you choose to become a good witch or a light witch or a dark witch.
Yes.
But women don't get to choose. They just get forced into it, whereas the men can choose for some reason. The warlocks
that's not
can.
okay.
I don't know. This is what they said.
Gender equality, Joel. Gosh.
It wasn't me. It was the warlocks.
I can't believe you're like that.
Anything you want to say about that? Because this, for me, is not approved.
Oh, this beautiful creature deserves to be put down. This is not approved. Don't watch it.
I love it.
There's worse witch movies, for sure.
There are.
So if we're grading on the curve, I would say this is in the middle.
No.
But I haven't watched all of these that you have.
Bad.
Yeah. So bad. It's more like bad. All right, next one. I am going to go alphabetical here. Bed knobs and broomsticks.
From 1971.
An apprentice witch, 3 kids, and a cynical magician con man search for the missing component to a magical spell to be used in the defense of Britain in World War II.
It's funny, I never considered this one a witch movie, even though it's clearly there right in front of you.
Yeah, the whole thing is she's trying to be a witch,
Yeah.
but she's not good at it, which I didn't catch on to at all.
It almost
really
felt like
as a
the
kid.
low-budget version of Mary Poppins,
It
honestly.
did.
Yes.
It is 139 minutes.
Yeah. And I liked it as a kid, and I haven't watched it since, so I'm going to hang on to my nostalgia and say approved.
It is really interesting to watch, but it's also
Have you seen it recently?
I sat down and watched like part of it while it was on, like maybe like 20 minutes of it.
Right.
And I was like, this is crazy. But that's
Like
all
just
I remember.
zany, just
yeah, zany is the right word.
unpredictable.
They have a
Zany is
whole
the
like
right word.
under the sea kind of
It does,
moment.
yes.
They have a soccer game with animals. Like,
Isn't it this one where they bring in animation as
yeah,
well?
yeah, they do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when they're bobbing along on the beautiful briny sea.
Yeah. It's weird.
Triguna Macoides Tricorum Sadistii. This is definitely approved by me.
Okay, there we go.
Is it good, Joel?
I actually watched this with my kids recently, and the runtime was a little long, but they stayed engaged, and I actually
I
really
remember
enjoyed
thinking it was more visually interesting than I imagined.
when all the armor comes to life and fights the
Yeah, I remember
bad
that.
guys. I loved that part as a kid, and I still loved it as an adult.
1971, that's old. Okay, next one. Bell, Book, and Candle, 1958.
A modern-day witch likes her neighbor but despises his fiancé, so she enchants him to love her instead.
We've all been there.
This one has
Right.
James Stewart and Kim Novak, who are also in Vertigo.
Yeah, this is
Oh, wow.
actually the same year as Vertigo.
What?
Vertigo was like January. This is in November.
Yeah,
and this was actually
weird.
directed by Richard Quine, who did "Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's Hung You in the Closet, and I'm Feeling So Sad."
That's the title.
That's the title of the
That's
movie.
a quotable quote right there.
It's
So,
apparently
this is
Good
also
enough for a title,
This
apparently.
was the inspiration for the TV show Bewitched.
there's a couple of these where they said that, and this I believe
You
it
can
for this
tell
one.
on this one, I feel.
Yeah. So this one,
Go ahead.
I just feel like the flame between the two leads has extinguished in Bell, Book, and Candle. Like in Vertigo, there was some chemistry there. This
Well,
one,
it's creepy chemistry, right?
it is because the whole time Kim Novak seems to be like sleep. She's a witch who lives in the same apartment building, and it's like she's just apparently witches can feel no emotion in this world, and so she doesn't show emotion. So she's like this bland character. And then Jimmy Stewart, bless his heart,
It's a little bit older.
he's an older man, and
Yeah.
this is actually his last romantic leading role. Like he listened to the critics on this one, and they were all, "He's too old to be playing romantic leads," and he's like, "Well, all right, I'm done."
Yeah, he even said, "I'm too old."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how old he was.
And Jack Lemmon is in this. He's completely wasted in the role.
Yeah.
Like he does, they don't use him at all.
Right.
I can't give this one
It's
a big
not
approval.
approved.
Oh,
Yeah, I have not seen this one.
People are going to be mad. People like this one.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Well, it's got Jimmy Stewart. All right, next movie from 2005, Bewitched.
Yeah, you know Bewitched from the TV series. It's basically that, but 10 times worse.
Is that the plot synopsis on IMDb?
The plot synopsis.
That's about right.
So the plot synopsis, I'm just going to give my version of it.
Yeah.
It's the movie's Bewitched, and it's about a world in which the TV show Bewitched existed, and they're going to reboot the TV series Bewitched, but there also happens to be real life characters from Bewitched in the Bewitched
Featuring a Will
Cast
Ferrell
in
who
the
is
movie.
incapable of showing any sort of acting skill or
But this was after
Or chemistry
This is
with-
after Zoolander, Old School, Elf, and Anchorman. Will Ferrell knew what comedy was at this
Yeah.
point. Why did he not do it
He's just
in
like
this
stumbling
movie?
around in this movie.
And then Nicole Kidman is Samantha.
Yeah.
I guess she's Samantha, but she's not Samantha, but she is
It
Samantha.
doesn't mean I don't even care.
Who
No.
thought this was a good idea? She just is like this breathless Marilyn Monroe thing the whole time.
Yeah.
Like,
What was that?
oh, what's money? Do I need to spend money? And it's just so weird. Like,
Did you watch it again for this, or had you?
I
seen
watched it for the first time. I thought I had
Oh.
seen it.
Really?
I watched it for the first time for this. And gentlemen, this will probably make my worst of the year
Yes,
list.
it's very bad.
This was so bad. Like unfunny bad. I hated this movie.
Wow.
Which is why it's approved. No,
That was going to be my joke.
not approved.
Not approved.
Hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it.
Hold on. One more time.
Hated it.
There we go.
All right, next one is Black Sunday from 1960.
A vengeful witch and her fiendish servant return from the grave and begin a bloody campaign to possess the body of the witch's beautiful look-alike descendant.
Did you know this is Tim Burton's favorite scary movie?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's weird.
I didn't
So
know that.
you watch the beginning of this one, and the cover looks really creepy, right? Like it's got like a woman's face, and there's holes in it, and she's staring, and it's really eerie looking. It's actually not a surprise visually why Tim Burton likes this movie, and it even has this great intro.
The opening scene is worth the watch alone.
Yeah, it's like this woman is being punished by her royal brother, who is claiming she is a witch, and then puts this mask on her face, which does a lot of damage, and then makes sure that she is never awakened again. And you're like, well, she can't be a witch, but she really is. And then the movie becomes a farce of sorts, like just running through a castle and people changing bodies, and it just doesn't really work.
It's cheesy acting. It's cliche dialogue. I was also very confused as to whether
It's kind of Tim Burton-y then.
I was
little
confused as if the Princess Asa was a vampire or a witch.
Yeah.
It kind of went back and forth. By the way, this was directed by Mario Bava, who apparently did a bunch of Mystery Science Theater movies, like ones that got Mystery Science Theaters. This kind of has that same vibe to it.
Yeah.
But I got to give this one approval just because it stuck with me the first time I saw it, and I've never been
Like
able
the whole
to forget
thing
about
did,
it.
or just the intro?
Really, just the intro, but I mean, people give Saving Private Ryan a pass for that, right?
That's true. Yeah. Oh, you
Controversial
hot takes by
opinions.
Joel in October. Also, Mussolini had banned horror films in Italy, and this was only the third horror film made in Italy.
Wow.
It was made in 1960, but only the third one because they finally started coming back into fashion. But it's not approved for me.
Okay, so
There's not enough there.
I haven't seen this
one.
one. Yeah. All right, next one is from 19...
But what, Jacob, based on the synopsis and title...
I would totally watch that intro from your description.
Yes.
Yeah. Next one, 1962, Burn, Witch, Burn. I am familiar with this one.
Which you actually brought up on episode 127, Hipster Horror Flick Picks.
You did?
I did, yeah.
This is one of his picks.
Or also known as Night of the Eagle.
Yes, in America
Yeah.
they changed it to Night of the Eagle.
Which sounds like a spy thriller, honestly.
Yeah,
Kinda.
that's a stupid name.
Synopsis. A woman who may be a witch defends her husband from forces attempting to harm him.
So this movie is interesting because it's like obvious. There's an obvious suspect who's the witch. And then it kind of changes on you, or does it?
Spoiler
And
alert.
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of.
true.
Well, there's all the
from
marital drama
1962,
and everything, too.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like a curse is put in place. And I like the twists in this movie.
There are a couple.
And then there's this finale, which really brings it home for me. So, look, there's an eagle in this movie, Night of the Eagle. Sorry if that's a spoiler alert. And in this movie, it is actually huge. It has like a 9-foot wingspan, and it's chasing him down. And to me, that part was actually kind of awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, it felt really, just really creepy. And also, fun fact, raw meat was placed on the lead actor's back to make the eagle swoop at him.
The giant eagle.
Yeah, the giant eagle.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, can I be in your movie? Yeah, just hold on.
Here's
Let
some
me put
meat.
a steak on there real quick to make this a little more dangerous. We'll see what happens.
That is scary.
I really like this one.
I enjoyed it.
I struggled with this one.
You did?
Really?
I felt like it was a 30-minute Twilight episode stretched into 90 minutes.
I was totally
where
okay
there was
with
like it really was the middle act was driving me nuts because it was very repetitive.
Sure.
Where the wife would not explain things and just tell her husband to do things like don't answer, don't play that record, don't answer the phone, don't answer the door. Like it was like she would never explain anything to him, and it was just driving me nuts.
No,
I'm like,
she kept trying to, and then he
she
never
wouldn't.
listened to her.
No, she would just say, "Don't do this." She would never give an explanation as to why. And I'm like, if you
Because
just
there'd
said
be no movie if the explanation was there.
exactly,
Right.
and that got a little annoying to me. I can't give this one a bacon.
Not approved for you, huh?
But
if
I've
you
seen
two
it,
do,
so
it's
I
approved.
can.
Then you can approve it.
Approved. In fact, I think I recommended this on whatever that episode
Yeah,
was,
episode
right?
127. This was your pick.
All right, next is Halloween Town, 1998.
After learning she is a witch, a girl helps save a town full of other supernatural creatures. This is like a Disney made-for-TV movie.
So it's really worth talking about.
So I just watched this one like 2 weeks ago.
With your
and-
kids, right?
With my kids.
Okay.
And I think they enjoyed it. Like, we enjoyed the beginning of it. And then they go to Halloween Town, and you basically see people in mismatched masks trying to be creatures.
What age is this aiming for? Like, is it like
8.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's
Yeah.
8-year-olds. But
Kids,
this one has spawned sequels. Like, it's like very
Oh, it's
popular.
a franchise
Really?
now.
Yeah, there are like 5 movies in it. All with Debbie Reynolds, who is
That's horrible.
adorably
but it's like a
fun.
Brand X Hocus Pocus.
Oh, absolutely.
Debbie Reynolds, huh?
Yeah, Debbie Reynolds is one of the main roles in this.
I feel like the
She's gotta be
story
ancient.
and the world is fun, but the movie is really low budget and kind of terrible.
It's-
I hate even saying that.
It's definitely a made-for-TV movie. Kids might like it, but I can't give it a Baconsale approval.
Yeah, not approved.
Next up is Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters, Witch Hunters, 2013.
Hansel and Gretel are bounty hunters who track and kill witches all over the world.
Also known as the movie you hope that would be good, but wasn't.
Well, this one was funny, starring Jeremy Renner and Gemma, I can't remember her name, Gemma Arterton?
Yeah, Gemma
Arterton. Gemma Arterton, I was so off. Famke Jensen is also in this. This one was weird because this is a PG-13 movie that the director really wanted to make rated R.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cool concept, but it totally is like this juvenile teen action concept.
Yeah.
And then the director's like, let's throw in some swears and some nudity and some blood gore splatter.
But PG-13 still somehow.
Yeah. Well, it was R, though.
No, it was
Yeah.
R. Yeah.
It ended
Oh,
up,
it was,
It,
yeah.
ended up being R. And that's the thing is, like, he kept pushing it to be R, and I the whole time I'm like, this doesn't feel like an R-rated movie.
Yeah, it's not at all.
It really doesn't. And then it would, like, skip over something. I'm like, oh,
It
something
feels like
there.
it was made in like the 3D era when they were just trying to cash in, just for like a little bit of blood splatter at the screen.
Yeah, kind of like that. And this one was funny because the budget was $50 million. It only made $55 million domestically, but it made a total of $226 million.
So interesting enough, so Adam McKay
It's terrible.
produced this movie, and I'm going to read his quote. He
Adam
says,
McKay, the comedy director.
Yes. He's producer of this movie. He said, the idea is they've grown up and they hunt witches. It's a hybrid sort of old-timey feeling. Yet there's pump-action shotguns, modern technology, but in an old style. We heard it and we were just like, that's a freaking franchise. You could make 3 of those. This is the only movie in the franchise.
Well, it's only 2019, so it's,
Yeah, maybe there's another one coming.
only
out.
been
Jeremy
6
Renner's got
years.
a bright career ahead of him, doesn't he?
Oh. So not approved for me.
No, not approved. It was a great
It
concept.
should be fun. It should be really fun.
It
Yeah,
should
it
have
was
been
a
so
good
much more
concept.
fun.
It
It was a
just
good
didn't
concept.
work,
Just didn't do it right.
Next one, which I'm not sure why we're talking about at all in this, is the Harry Potter franchise.
Because it's got witches and wizards. Synopsis: Harry's a wizard. Voldemort wants to kill him. Runtime, by the way, 1,179 minutes for the entire franchise.
Whoa.
A budget of 1.2 billion for the entire franchise,
Jeez.
and a box office of 7.7 billion for the entire franchise. Yeah, definitely approved.
Oh, come on. It's approved.
Yeah.
Next up is Hocus Pocus, 1993.
A curious youngster moves to Salem, where he struggles to fit in before awakening a trio of diabolical witches that were executed in the 17th century.
Fun fact, Sarah Jessica Parker, who played a witch in this movie.
Along with Bette Midler and Kathy Najimy.
Absolutely. So she actually has her 10th great-grandmother was arrested in Salem, Massachusetts in the 1600s for sundry acts of witchcraft.
Sundry, huh?
Yes, and she never went to court.
To make it worse or better?
She escaped with her life, and she said, it's changed everything about who I thought I was. So it tied everything together.
The funny
Shut
thing
up,
about this
Sarah
movie,
Jessica Parker.
this one, I was going to say, this
Go
one
eat a
kinda-
cracker.
This one actually
Oh.
bombed at the box office.
Did it really?
28 million
Really?
budget, only made 39.5 million. And in fact, the Miami Herald called it, quote, a pretty lackluster affair, adding this comment: despite the triple threat actress combo, Hocus Pocus won't be the sister act of 1993.
That was the standard.
Apparently, that was the standard in
And
1993.
Kathy and Jimmy's like, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This one came. Like, I was older when this one came out. I was a teenager at
Yeah.
this point, and I
So you
would
probably never cared to watch
I thought
it.
it was too cool for school for this one.
Same.
As I've watched it down the road, I never really understood people's obsession with it at first.
Right.
But it's grown on me.
It has a charm.
I
to
watched it for the first time in college, and
Yeah?
a bunch of girls we go visit loved it. And I was like, this movie doesn't look very good at all, but I've now seen it so many times, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching it with my kids. It's got a scary element to it. They literally, spoiler alert for the opening scene, they kill a kid right at the beginning of the movie, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what the heck? But it's got this dark kind of scary vibe to it, but it's also a very safe Halloween film for the family.
Yeah, that's why it works. It's the
Approved.
combination.
Approved.
Approved. Next up from 1942, I Married a Witch.
Beautiful.
That's the name of the movie.
Yes. A beautiful 17th century witch returns to life to plague politician Wallace Woolley, descendant of her persecutor. You know, Ken, you know what my favorite witch movie is?
I Married a Witch?
My favorite witch movie is the one where it starts with like a witch trial and a hanging, and then it jumps forward a couple hundred years.
What was that?
Every single one of these.
Yeah.
Every one of these movies does that.
Also, this movie is so weird
Almost.
because they're like witch spirits that come out of a tree.
I don't remember Harry Potter going like that.
You don't? Did you watch them? No.
Every single
No,
Harry
actually,
Potter
did I?
movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Veronica Lake was in this movie and was apparently really terrible to work with. And she hated her co-star so much, she hid like a 40-pound weight in her costume. And so when he had to pick her up and carry her,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
like,
just to mess with them. Apparently,
hated each other. And he said he gave the movie another title, but it's a swear word, so we're not gonna go there.
But Veronica Lake, there is some charm about her, though, on
There is,
screen.
yes.
Like, really, I think I will say it. I'm going to go with there. I was bewitched by Veronica Lake in this
Aw.
movie. I watched this one and I'm like, she's kind of charming. And then the plot was ridiculous. It was so
Awful.
cheesy.
Yeah.
But it was so innocent and it was innocent Halloween themed fun. So I got to approve this one.
Not approved.
Not approved from your description. I have not.
I love
seen
how that's so easy to do.
Yeah. All right. Next
It's
is
so easy to agree with Kent.
Kiki's Delivery Service, 1989.
We talked about this one on our episode 198, Getting Ghibli with It, because it's a Studio Ghibli film. This is about a young witch on her mandatory year of independent life finds fitting into a new community difficult when she supports herself by running an air courier service.
Yes. Adorable, fun, approved.
I think this one's approved as well. We talked about it. If you want to hear more, listen to our Studio Ghibli show. But really, this is a fun, cute movie. Not a lot happens in it, but it's okay.
Right.
Next up is Practical Magic from 1998. It is here.
Two witch sisters raised by their eccentric aunts in a small town face closed-minded prejudice and a curse which threatens to prevent them from ever finding lasting love.
I watched
Also
this one
singing.
last week.
Starring Sandra Bullock, Nicole Kidman, Stockard Channing.
That was the third time this month, right?
Yeah, I love it so
that's
much.
crazy. Yeah.
I didn't really get what was going on here because I thought it was a love story, the whole thing. But then it wasn't
No.
at all
No.
until it was.
Like, they really...
Because there's tragedy from a love story.
I think...
And then there's a weird cop who comes into town.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what was happening.
No.
And I'm still confused.
Yeah. I think that if the makers of Practical Magic spent as much time on the story that they did on the soundtrack, it would have been a much better movie.
Right.
Because this soundtrack was iconic.
This
There's some
kiss,
creepiness, though.
This kiss. Impeccable.
This is where the guys,
Yep.
the guy's buried in the front yard and he crawls
Backyard.
out, right?
Yeah.
Backyard. No, it's the front yard.
It's backyard.
Oh, whatever. But yeah, no, there was kind of some creepy elements to that, right? No, I thought there was like an ominousness to like him like finding his way out. And,
I'm just saying that the
Didn't
charms
feel-
of Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman can only take you so far. This movie cost more to make than Saving Private Ryan.
What?
Which came out the same year. I'm still trying to figure out where all that money
This
went.
won the best
What?
picture, though, right?
They must have gotten
This
paid.
one? No. Yeah, they must have paid all the actresses. But the
Yeah.
whole time I'm like, I don't really like any of these characters.
Yeah.
I don't really like the story. It was terrible. This is not Baconsale-approved.
Is it the one where they have this song with what is it they sing together?
The Lime and the Coconut.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the famous bit from it. Yeah.
But and this is one of those movies too where the people don't communicate, and that's what drives the plot forward. And I hate that. Where
I
simple
know, that is the
conversation
worst,
would
yeah.
have saved everything.
All right. Next up from 2011, Season of the Witch.
14th century knights transport a suspected witch to a monastery where monks deduce her powers could be the source of the Black Plague.
You want to know who I want to see as a medieval knight? Like a
can't remember
convincing medieval knight during the Crusades?
Is this the?
Nicolas Cage.
That's
What? All right.
Very,
I mean, his accent.
That's very
the
convincing.
battle scenes in this movie are smoky, and you can't really tell what's going on. There's a lot of green screen here. And then it's basically it's a road trip movie with a witch in a cage.
They have to take a witch to this other monastery for some reason. It's Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman.
yeah.
Are like two
I
dude
do remember
bros
this.
in the medieval times. Like, honestly, it's like everyone else is like, forsooth, I've seen a witch and I will find her out. And then Nicolas Cage is like, all right, next one to kill a bad guy buys the beer. And it's like, what? What is happening? And then Ron Perlman comes over and is like, hey, bro. It's so bizarre.
My beer.
It's like Nicolas Cage is in a different movie than the rest of the
yeah,
cast.
but he has long hair.
He does.
He
And
does.
There's literally a part when he's blocking crossbow arrows with a dagger, and I was like, "How is that happening right now?" I don't know.
Witch powers, obviously.
Yeah.
Claire
I mean,
Foy played the witch too.
How is the
Yeah,
hair
really
happening right now? But
It was bizarre.
Yeah, and sadly bad. I wanted it to be like so bad it was good. It was just boring.
I wanted to be so much better, and it was really
And
boring.
then it ends with a really CG demon at the end.
oh
It's-
yeah,
yeah.
at the end. So no good, not approved.
not approved. Okay. Next up is Teen Witch, 1989.
High school misfit Louise discovers magical abilities, but the teenage witch finds that she cannot conjure herself true love. So what?
Ruh-roh.
That's what it said on IMDb.
so what?
So what?
I'm so mad at you, Joel.
Is this the one you sent me the clip of?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this was the worst.
It was the worst. Like, I
Why are you
can't
mad
believe
at me?
Because you're like, hey, we need to add this to the list. I'm like, Teen Witch. Is that like a TV movie? And you're like, just watch this clip. And there's a clip of there's these guys who are freestyle rapping out, out in the front
Oh,
yard.
that's
right?
not even the clip I got.
And her friend was like, oh yeah, there are a couple. Any clip you watch is bad, but I guess these were the two best. And her friend's like, I wish I was cool like that. And Teen Witch is like, you know what? You are gonna be. Zap. And then she starts singing. The best friend starts singing with these freestyle rappers.
Supersonic,
No.
yada, top that, top that.
Top that. It's bad.
Well, the clip he sent me is just them in the locker room going,
I like boys.
I'm glad you guys said that and I didn't.
We all sound the same, Joel.
I literally
dang it.
put my hand over my mouth and was like, oh, this is bad.
So this
and
is
it's not a musical. Like, we're
No.
talking about musical parts. It's not.
no.
Okay, so here's the thing. First of all, I want to mention the director also directed Baby Songs ABC 1, 2, 3 Colors and Shapes. Pointing that out there.
my kid's
But
favorite movie.
this movie was intended to be the girl version of Teen Wolf. Like they're like they use the same font and
Yeah,
everything. They're
yeah.
like, okay, well, how can we put a spin on this? But the movie makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Like I think everyone should see this movie once just to experience how amazingly ridiculous it is. I mean, from the storyline, it doesn't make sense. The bad acting, like it's a jaw-dropping experience at times when like a musical number starts and you're like, what is this? Like Jacob said, you cover your mouth and you're like, what is happening right now?
And it just has a really bad message where it's like she's going after the hot guy in school and uses a charm to like entrance him.
Yes.
And then apparently doesn't need it, but he's still the hot guy and still kind of a jerk, but it's okay because she wins him over.
Yeah.
Like it was just not great.
And-
I mean, go for boof if you're going for anything, you know? Don't go for
I
the
love boof.
Exactly.
Also, it's like it's PG-13, which I thought was odd. And it's like it wanted to be raunchy, but it didn't dare to be raunchy. So they have a sexual education, as Kent would say.
There you go.
A class that the teacher's giving medical terms for everything, but it's supposed to be like raunchy. And there's a love scene where they're making out like 2 inches from the camera for like a full minute. It's
Yeah.
gross, but it's not. I can't explain this movie, but I also
Don't try.
I cannot give this a Baconsale approval. As much as I want people to see it,
It's not approved.
You
It's
could
so
not
bad.
do that. That would be wrong of you. Okay, next up, The Blair Witch Project, 1999.
we've spoken about this one a number of times on
Yes, we have.
Baconsale.
Especially the ending.
3 film students vanish after traveling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend. This was one we talked about as being a huge success because it budget was $60,000 and it made $248 million.
Incredible. That's almost $11,000 for every $1 spent.
Yes.
Math. That's
That's
Blair
good
Witch math right there.
This is a horror film wrapped in an art film.
What's great about this is you don't see the Blair Witch, right? But actually, she was meant to be seen.
Yeah.
So there was as characters were running out of their tents, Heather yells, "What the is that?" And the cameraman is supposed to pan to the left.
Top that.
What the top that? Cameraman pans to the left where the audience would briefly see a woman wearing a white gown in the distance. But the cameraman forgot to pan to the left in the scene and it was not reshot. And so they were going to, hey guys, do this. They never shot it. And so they left it out of the movie and the movie was better for it.
I love those happy
Yeah.
accidents. Oh, I forgot to mention. Sorry, jumping back to Teen Witch real quick.
Oh, of course. Budget was jumping back to Teen Witch.
Jumping back. Budget of $2.5 million. You want to know how much it made?
60,000?
$27,000.
Oh my
Oh.
goodness.
Sorry, I wanted to bring
That
that
makes me feel a lot better, actually.
Yeah.
about the world.
Like,
but it's become a cult classic since then.
No,
Like,
it hasn't.
Yes, it has.
Don't make up stories.
People,
You're
it's got-
lying right now.
I swear it's got like a 90-something% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
So Blair Witch is definitely approved.
Blair Witch is definitely approved.
That's the one that made it. I mean, it was really famous based on the fact that they did all the marketing, all the campaigning,
Everyone
based
thought
on
it was
the
a
fact
snuff
that it
film.
was real.
Yes.
Yeah, snuff
And,
film.
and if you go into the movie watching it and just have that in your mind, this could, suspend your disbelief and say
Right.
this could be real. Also, watch
Found
this one with
footage.
serious movie
That's it,
watchers
yeah.
only. Don't watch this one with hecklers. They ruin
Yeah,
this
and
movie.
also
Oh,
put,
yeah,
put your phone away. Just kind of get in the experience. You're going to get a little sick from the camera work, but it's
will.
okay.
Not as much
Get to the end.
Cloverfield.
Okay, next up is from 1996, The Craft.
A newcomer to a Catholic prep high school falls in with a trio of outcast teenage girls who practice witchcraft.
Starring Robin Tunney, Fairuza Balk, and Nev Campbell.
I can't remember if I've seen this and it was so forgettable, I don't remember.
So you guys are not going to be surprised, but it was one of
that
those
about right?
90s movies.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think that's kind of what it
And
is.
for me, having seen it way back when, I was like, yeah, that was a cool movie.
Uh-oh.
I watched it again.
It has not aged well.
It has not aged well at all. So you guys aren't going to be surprised by this, but Fairuza Balk, who kind of has a distinct look, we'll say.
Scares me.
She's actually a Wiccan in real life.
I have that note. I said, I'm betting she's a Wiccan.
She is. So she was actually able to help the makers of the movie keep the storyline as realistic as they could.
You put that in quotes. Air
It
quotes.
just now, yeah.
Yeah.
So Fairuza Balk's creepy, and the movie hasn't aged well and is not good.
No, not approved.
Next up, also 1996, The Crucible, which we discussed earlier.
A Salem resident attempts to frame her ex-lover's wife for being a witch in the middle of the 1692 witchcraft trials.
Don't take my
This one stars Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder.
So you know how Daniel Day-Lewis is a method actor?
Yeah.
He didn't bathe
Go on.
or shower from the time filming began to when it wrapped.
Oh my gosh, his teeth in that movie.
Yeah.
That's the
bad.
most unforgettable part is his stupid, disgusting teeth.
Also, he built the house that that he lived in. John Proctor
did he?
lived in.
No, he didn't.
It says he built the house he lived in because of his habit of maintaining his character.
He's crazy.
He is crazy. But this
Yes.
this
That's
movie,
like Jared Leto crazy.
this movie was horrifying to me. Not because of any witchcraft or any scary things that happened, because
His teeth?
It portrays the terrifying idea that the innocent can be falsely accused,
Oh, yeah.
and a group of deceitful people, if united, can create whatever
Well,
truth
it's
they want.
based off the book and stage play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels
a brilliant
like it.
stage play.
And I thought it would be pretty paltry. In fact, from the cover, it looks like Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis are going to be in a relationship. And then you watch the movie
That's
and
what
you're
she
like, is that what she thought?
Well, that's what Abigail Williams thought.
Oh, yeah. In the movie, sure. But I felt so much paranoia and stress in this movie. It is entirely effective.
It's uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. You cannot settle into watching this thing. You
Yeah.
kind of squirm in your seat.
It is very much approved by me.
I would also very much approve
Yep.
this one. This may have been my favorite one,
Except for
aside
his
from Blair
teeth.
Witch that
Sure.
we watched.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Except for that.
Those darn teeth.
All right, next one from 2015 is Vin Diesel in The Last Witch Hunter.
The Last Witch Hunter is all. that
He's like,
stands
Fast and
between
Furious is working so
humanity.
good. I'm going to be the last witch hunter. No one wanted to see it. Oh, well.
The Last Witch Hunter is all that stands between humanity and the combined forces of the most horrifying witches in history.
It actually does try hard
This
in a
has
way.
Vin Diesel, Elijah Wood, and Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Which, if you're paying attention at home, that is the Marvel Universe, Lord of the Rings universe, and the Nolan Batman verse in one movie.
That's what we call Baconsale.
Baconsale slide, yeah.
I think this movie tries really hard to be cool, and it has so many cool elements to it.
Well, it was based off of Vin Diesel's Dungeons and Dragons character. Like he used to play.
No, it was not.
What do you mean?
It was. He played a game. He played Dungeons and Dragons. He had a character who was a witch hunter, and they were like, "What if we made a movie about this?" Like I thought it was based on a comic book or something like that. It's kind of a cool concept, though.
It is, but I don't know if I love it or hate it based on what you just said.
By the way, budget of around $90 million. It made $27 million in North America, but $113 million in other
Whoa.
territories. So
Other
this-
territories are dumb.
Yeah.
But
That's fair.
it's not a good movie per se. But I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to.
Yeah. Still, it's a bad movie.
I would call it a bad movie that's mildly charming at
If
times.
it's between
you know?
Season of the Witch or The Last Witch Hunter, watch The Last Witch Hunter.
Oh yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
This is
Yeah.
much better. This is
Yeah.
better than the Last Witch or than Season of the Witch.
Yes.
but
It
it's
is the same kind of vibe, though, right?
Right.
still not good.
Pseudo-serious.
It's not approved.
I can't approve it.
No.
Maybe- Should I approve it just to give it a half vote?
No.
Okay, I won't.
I'm telling you now.
You win.
Our next is The Witch from 2015.
The
Vitch.
The Vitch. There's two
Vitch.
V's there. A family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession.
So the premise is based on America's first witch hysteria, so which is set 62 years before the infamous Salem witch trials, which we mentioned in the show already. Mm-hmm. So, Joel, I kind of want to make a plea.
Go for it.
I really want you to approve this one.
I'm going to make a statement.
Okay.
If you're going to watch this edited, don't watch it.
Truth.
Because
But tell us about the movie.
well, okay, so
Okay.
it's a movie about this family who's living on the edge of a forest, and there's weird stuff that happens.
Witch.
Now, there are very few movies that I feel like editing kind of alters the storyline or
Sure.
changes the feel.
Yeah. Because it's a few seconds here and there.
But apparently the witch is always naked in this movie.
Yeah.
And so every time she appeared, the movie would be like, nope. And so I didn't see a lot of the horrifying parts with the nudity in it.
I see.
And there's a lot of like, I was going to mention this in our Soundtrack and Fears episode, but there's this thing at the end, part of the soundtrack called The Witch's Coven.
Is this
where
the one that
hear
you
the
were like, this
howling-
is disturbing?
It's disturbing. It's howling and chanting, but there are a bunch of naked witches, and it's awful. Like it obviously turns you off, but it makes you feel disturbed, and you're like, this movie's gross and weird, which for me makes it a good movie.
Well, and the thing is, I felt like I got the slow burn, but there was no real payoff.
There's no payoff,
'Cause
right?
The ending is literally
A bunch of naked witches?
Yep.
A bunch of naked witches.
And I cut it out completely. So my ending, I kind of went, well,
So you
that
got
was
slow
weird.
burn to nothing.
Well,
right?
it gave me kind of some finality, obviously, because stuff happens that happens. But then in the end, it was just like, oh well, I guess that's how it is. And I did look up the ending, like I read up on it, and I'm like, oh well, that's weird. And there was some uncomfortable moments. Obviously, it's got a very kind of good, realistic, gritty feel to it. Almost too realistic because you can't understand the characters.
Right. This one made me so shell-shocked when I saw this in the theater a few years ago. I couldn't shake it for a couple days.
yeah.
That said, I think it's brilliant.
And I didn't think it was that brilliant. But Kent
Well,
didn't agree
naked
with
witches make all the difference, apparently.
Naked witches. So for me, it's approved.
that. I can't give it an approval.
Joel? I'll make a plea to you. In fact, I may make you a bargain. I'll approve another movie on this list.
You
if
want to do
approve this one.
bargains during a witch show?
I do. Oh, no. Hold on to that.
I brought my mistletoe.
I was going to say it was effective in parts, but overall I was like, I don't want to watch that again.
Yeah. I haven't seen it again.
Well, he probably
It's
doesn't want to see it
creepy.
again either, Joel. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for the right reasons. Because I was so messed up by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
It
are the
is
right concerning.
It
You're
is
not-
the-
that doesn't make me want to
To
see
me,
it.
it is
though.
the
It seems-
quintessential witch movie because there's so much mystery, paranoia, even within a small family, and disturbing images.
Definitely has that.
Yes.
And it's a satisfying ending.
It's totally.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I read the ending and I was like,
Satisfying as far as like, okay, I'm going to go take a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not in the mood for that. Next up, The Witches from 1990.
a young boy stumbles into a witch convention and must stop them. So this is Angelica Houston. This was a classic. I mean, it's a
This
Roald-
was
it's a Roald
very
Dahl
scary
book.
to me as a kid.
Yeah.
The makeup was so great.
When
Yes.
they peel off all their faces and stuff like that.
Yes. And
This-
turn them into like mice.
Yeah, Joel, did you know about the book's ending? Different to the movie ending?
Oh yeah, I actually read the book before I saw the movie.
Were you happy with the
Yes.
movie ending after you read the book?
I was okay with it, but I remember being like, "Why'd they?" That was one of my first instances of like, "Why'd they change the ending?" Like I remember as a kid being like, "Why?"
In the book, it's very unhappy. So after the Grand High Witch and the witches are all killed by the hotel staff, spoiler alert, Luke and the grandma, Luke is the mouse at this point, return home and begin their plan to rid the world of witches. And Luke learns that mice can probably live only another 9 years and decides in the end himself and grandma will die together. So he is still a mouse.
It doesn't feel that dark in the book, though. It's more like, "We're gonna get those witches, Grandma."
I thought they were going to
For as
go
long as we
home after
can.
killing all the witches, and there's a witch waiting for him. It kills them both.
No,
that's the end.
We're going to die in 9 years, both of us. Because I'm a mouse and you're a grandma.
That quote's getting taken out.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely approved for me.
It's approved for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, same. All right, next up from 1987, The Witches of Eastwick.
3 single women in a picturesque village have their wishes granted at a cost when a mysterious and flamboyant man arrives in their lives. This is directed by George Miller, who did Mad Max and Happy Feet.
And Babe, too, right?
Yeah, Babe Pig in the City.
So Jack Nicholson, pretty great in this movie. He's meant to play Satan. And the witches are, Cher, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Susan Sarandon? Is that what it is?
That's exactly right.
I saw this one
can't
on
remember
TV
this.
when I was younger, and I didn't understand a lot what was going on because the whole thing is salacious. That's what it's meant to
It's all
be.
about lust.
And I think my mom probably came in and said, "You shouldn't be watching a movie like this." And of course, I like scary movies, and I thought that's what it was.
And then
but
your
it's
grandma
just
gave
not.
it to you later on VHS.
She totally did, and it was very uncut.
I remember seeing the cover and being like, "I want to rent that one." And my dad's like, "That's not." Dad and Mom, I can't remember which one, just said, "That's
Yeah.
not the witches you're thinking of."
So apparently this was just a disaster behind the scenes. So producers kept intruding and they were cutting the budget and they're like, let's add some aliens. And so basically Jack Nicholson and George Miller walked off the set all of the time. They're like, this movie is a mess. Let's hurry and finish it and just do whatever. It's a bad movie.
Yeah, it's a
And
bad movie.
it's not approved.
Not approved.
All right, next up, The Wizard of Oz.
You know the Wizard of Oz.
It seems familiar.
Well, it's like one of the most iconic witches out there with the whole "I'll get you, my pretty."
The iconic imagery of a witch.
Exactly. That's what you think of when
Green
you think of a
face
witch.
and everything.
You got the broom and the wart
Yeah.
and the long nose, but definitely approved.
Yeah,
No
definitely approved.
question here.
Yeah.
Next up from 2006, The Woods.
Set in 1965 New England, a troubled girl encounters mysterious happenings in the woods surrounding an isolated girls' school.
I'm mad at you, Joel.
Why are you mad at me?
Because you said we should add this to the list. And I hated it so much.
It wasn't good.
So it's called The Woods. It's about like a boarding school, and it's kind of mysterious. And deaths happen, and they whisper a lot, and then they're allowed like noises all the time, and so you hear no dialogue, and then it just tries to jump scare you the entire movie.
The whole time they're talking like this
Yes.
to each other. You need to take this test. Are you okay with that? That's what they say the entire time.
Did she die?
Ow.
That
Ow.
literally
That's the movie.
that.
That hurt
Sorry
my
to
ass.
everybody.
But it was directed by Lucky McKee guys who did Deathcember and All Cheerleaders Die.
You know,
I mean, the last one is actually one of my favorites. Cheerleader movies.
So
Tier
this-
1 cheerleader
I
movie.
feel like December is part of the calendar extended universe. So
my ears still hurt from that.
Sorry, listener out there. This was a really boring movie, and I thought, okay, it's going to pay off in the end, and then it didn't. And it had Bruce Campbell in it, which I was like, Bruce Campbell's movie
It's a very serious character.
and then he wasn't fun. The only claim to fame this movie has is that it took the name The Woods from M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
yes, and it was shelved
That
for
is it.
3 years, but still retained the title.
Yeah. They were gonna use The Woods. This one was using it, and then they were like, "We're gonna release it in theaters." And I think they watched the movie and went, "No, let's not
bad.
release it in theaters.
Yeah.
Straight to DVD, not approved."
You included a straight to DVD on purpose. I see what you
Yes,
did
only
here.
because it got brought up a number of times in the best witch movies.
Ugh.
Oh.
All right. Speaking of the best witch movies, the next one is The Worst Witch from 1986.
This is also another made-for-TV movie. Mildred is one of the young girls at the prestigious Witch Academy who can't seem to do anything right.
I saw the song in this movie years before I saw the actual movie.
Tim Curry is the Grand High Wizard singing, "Anything can happen on Halloween."
Okay, that's worth seeing.
Dog could turn into a cat.
And you see the cape turn into like a video projector.
It's like a green screen on
I'm
this
not going to
cape.
lie. I want to see it now.
My favorite line, though,
Just to see
Jake,
that.
oh, go ahead.
well, my favorite line of the song is like he does all these rhymes that are just obviously the easiest rhyme possible. And at one point, out of nowhere, he's like, "Has anyone seen my tambourine?" And he pulls out a tambourine and starts playing it because tambourine rhymed with green or something like before. I can't even remember what the rhyme is.
So you want to see it.
That's very Tim Curry.
But you really don't.
Because it's so bad?
about this girl who's just bullied and has been called the worst witch.
Veruza Balk again.
Oh, it is. You're right.
Yeah.
And it's so low budget. And at one point, there was this.
But Tim Curry says, "Has anyone seen my tambourine?"
There's
Yes.
a coven outside
Okay,
of Hogwarts because basically J.K. Rowling
I'm still
stole
in.
everything from this movie. And
This is before this is Hogwarts before Hogwarts was Hogwarts.
And there's a coven, and all of a sudden, there's these evil women that just kind of hang out outside the walls, and they break out into song well before Tim Curry does. And I busted a gut. I was laughing so hard at how bad this movie was.
Constance Hardboom is totally the Severus Snape of Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches.
Oh my gosh. So Joel, is this approved?
Totally approved because it's ridiculous fun, and I just grin every time I see it. It's got your Diana Rigg in it as well from Game of
Dame
Thrones.
Diana Rigg?
Yeah.
From Avengers?
No.
The original
Well,
Avengers.
Yes, the original Avengers.
This
yeah.
is not approved. This movie is atrocious. Only watch the YouTube video of Tim Curry singing.
It's so
But I'll
ridiculous.
make it approved if you make The Witch approved.
I'm okay being split on this one.
That's funny. All right. Are you gentlemen ready? We are to number 26.
All right. The
Of
final one.
26. This is Witchfinder General from 1968.
A young soldier seeks to put an end to the evils caused by a vicious witch hunter when the latter terrorizes his fiancée and kills her uncle.
This sounds interesting.
Starring Vincent Price.
Yeah, he actually regards this as the finest movie of his horror career.
Wow, really?
Well,
Yes.
but the director,
He did like 70.
Yeah, he did.
the director Michael Reeves, he kept getting after Vincent Price of stop hemming it up.
Matt Reeves'
stop hemming
dad.
it up.
I
Yeah.
can't.
And he said like Vincent Price
love
is
it
like
too much.
he's like good young. I'm not going to do a Vincent Price impersonation.
Yes.
But it's like young man. I've done 87 films. What can you possibly? What have you done? And he said I've done 3 good ones. Oh. And then Vincent Price actually kind of stepped in line.
Yes.
And afterwards, Vincent Price looked back at his performance and he said, "Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what you need to do." But this is
There's no actual witch in this movie, by the way.
no. There's none.
What? Well,
And
what's it
it's
about?
kind of sketchy. A
Oh,
lot of
it's-
stuff in this movie is really sketchy.
It's brutal.
Sketchy how?
abusive and a little
Picture
bit
70s
R.I.P.Y.?
violence. Yeah.
EY.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little asexual, as Kent would say.
Indeed.
And it's a little violent, and it's weird because this is 1968. So I was like, oh, it's pre-production, production code. Kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
young
Young man, I've starred in 87 movies.
Yes, but this one was horrifying because it was interesting because it was based on historical figures, and like Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General,
Yes.
he basically self-appointed himself as I'm a Witchfinder General. I will find these witches, and he was doing all the pricking tests and the drowning tests
Right.
and doing all that, getting people to confess, and it's kind of scary because of that.
It's scary, and you hate some of these villains.
Yeah.
Like you absolutely hate them.
They're slimy.
Yeah. Joel, what'd you think?
The thing is, I was interested by it, but I was more interested by the real history than I was the movie.
Right.
I got to give this one a not approved.
I'm good. I'm going not approved too. I
Oh,
feel
really?
bad about it
This is one I was on the fence with. So
because this is one of the most memorable ones, but still, I didn't enjoy really watching it.
yeah,
It's a little too abusive.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
there you go.
So not approved. Honestly, most of those were not approved for me.
I just looked up some of the ratings on that one. It's an R in Australia. It's banned in Chile. K18 in Finland. It goes on and on and on.
By the way, it's really hard to get an
it's
R.
like
in Australia.
NC-17.
Well, no. See, okay. So there's also different cuts. Like there's a original cut, and then there's like almost a director's cut where they add in more stuff. And so
What, add in some make it worse?
yes, make it more brutal,
More
and
R.
gory, and horrible. But yeah,
Satisfying conclusion, though.
yes,
Yeah.
The ending was good in that regard. But there you go.
Okay.
So there
Lots of movies.
We talked
Long
about
show.
we talked about movies. We talked about witches. We talked about everything. And now we're going to wrap things up.
All right. So before we go, we'd like to thank our patrons.
Yes, we would.
From the I Am the Listener category, we'd like to thank Greg Pascal, Adrian Gray, Stephen Ross, A More Civilized Podcast, and Terry Finley. From the Bacon Council, We would definitely like to thank you, Nicole D. Hale, Chris Anderson, Ryan Farron, Matt Mudro, and Reverse Listener.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for
Thank
supporting
you,
Baconsale.
everyone. For
We appreciate
supporting
it.
us.
We really do.
I really appreciate it.
But if you want to find me, you can find me at 76 Joel on Twitter, or you can find me performing with Quickwits. They perform every Saturday night at the Midvale Performing Arts Center. For more details, go to qwcomedy.com or go to the Quickwits Facebook page.
If you want to find me on Twitter and Instagram, it's at Kenny3DD. If you want to read my movie reviews, it's ShowtimeShowdown.com.
You can find me on Twitter at Jacob A. Rogers, but find Baconsale on Twitter and on Instagram at Baconsale. Lots of cool things there. Also, tpublic.com/Baconsale if you would like to go check out our merchandise. There's some Halloween-ish things there. And don't forget to come be a patron for us. Patreon.com/Baconsale. There's lots of advantages and perks and lists and videos, and it goes on and on and on.
Good
Go check
times, as Kent would say.
it out. So until next time, I like witches.
Drink break. Everybody.
Everybody drink break. This is how we did it in spoken for.
Have you guys ever kissed to the song?
No.
Kent? No, you didn't, did you? Because it was high school.
Nice. I kissed with centrifugal motion.
Did you like this? Jacob? This? Kiss? This?
That's exactly how it went down, yeah.
There's so many good witch songs out there.
Are there?
No.
It was all about Satan.
Satan.
And people were afraid.
Why'd you say it like that?
It makes it less scary. You can't invoke a Western Satan. Well, and everyone that goes to these essential oil conventions, they could probably be hanged for witchcraft.
Wait, Wikipedia?
They control everything.
The witches are controlling the information.
Witchipedia.
I'm not saying that I've never lied to my children. Don't get near daddy's candy or the peg prowler will grab you.
Never do necromancy, but necromancy, maybe a little bit better.
If you gaze into your lightsaber, you are a witch.
Let the record show Kent is a witch. I love witches. It never works for me. I always end up kissing witches.
Witches hate kisses. Did you know that?
Not in my experience.
Ketchup works.
So if
Yeah.
you nail it to the doorway with the horse on it, things won't work.
It will be bad.
Okay.
My money's on ketchup. Sorry, Kent, when you're editing this.
I like warlocks. I love them. I love them.
Hey, and then mistletoe?
Team Warlock on mistletoe.
Yeah. But the thing
I have
is,
some with me. You bet your mom I can.
well, you have your fair share of moles, and then you have someone else's share.
So
No.
everyone with a fur baby is a witch.
Yeah.
That gives you the most powerful herbs. That's the time
For
to pick
what?
it. For whatever spell you're doing.
Like KFC? What are we talking about?
yeah, it's the 7 herbs and spices.
You never know till you try it.
Says the guy who sprinkles people on his eggs. This may not be scripture, and so maybe we shouldn't be using
But it's really popular.
But they're like witches! Everyone loves witches!
But
And
less
I punch
creepy.
her and I kick her, sir.
Good
Stuff. Really good stuff.
There.
Hold this cucumber with your magic powers.
Ah!
Oh, I can't do it.
Okay, so
how we do it.
Oh, Dad, poor Dad. Mama's hung you in the closet and I'm feeling so sad. Oh, what? What's money? Do I need to spend money? Hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it.
hold on. One more time.
Hated it.
There we go.
Going,
I like boys. Other
this-
territories are dumb. This movie's gross and weird, which for me makes it a good movie. Because I'm a mouse and you're a grandma. Hello. Is it me you're spooking for?
Spookin' for?
Yes, I am.
That was my favorite Germantown, actually.
Spooking for. I am spooking for.
You are? By who?
My betrothed.
Oh, lovely.